Hey guys. Don't worry, we're not starting yet, but yeah, how's it going? Thank you guys for coming out. We're actually just testing some stuff, so I'm talking to the mic. But how's everybody doing? Yeah, that's awesome. We're still waiting on a few teams. Actually, it sounds like people are having trouble. Did you guys have trouble getting into the building when you got here? Yeah, it's a little bit weird, but. So we've been playing with that the whole time, and we figured out if you turn down the contrast, you could like inception this, so you could see like 100 screens in. It was really cool. So we should do that later in the. Am I still talking? Hi, how's it going? So if we give a round of applause to all the volunteers from like 2468 who helped me put this together. By the way, this is awesome. You guys are pretty killer. And for all the people who are just like standing outside for a while helping people get in, you guys are awesome, so thank you. Yeah. Like we've been talking about, we have you guys on video. We're going to have people taking pictures and stuff, so, just keep that in mind. And also, if you didn't see up on the screen, you are going to get an email notification about your password and your SACOT account. Make sure to mark us as not spam, because Google thinks we're spam. So you won't get anything from us if you don't do the spam thing. And don't worry, we're not going to spam you. It's just like, it'll be kind of hard to find anything. So, do I need to keep talking? Are we still going? Yeet. I don't know what to say anymore. Has everyone looked at all the stuff inside the folder? Have you guys seen all the people we're having talking? You have? Do you guys know who we're having talking? Do you guys know those people? There's one person there you guys should all know. Don Bossi. Yeah, we're going to have him Skype in. It's going to be pretty cool, so that was funny. It's weird getting to, like, email and talk to Don Bossi, like, casually. Like, it's really strange, guys. How's it going, Anna? You have anything you want to say? Hello? We good?
Wait, hold on. Yeah. I just like Brian.
Did you find Mark?
Yeah, Mark's over there. He on the sign. It's all good. We're live, Jake.
I was doing it on your teeth. Okay, Jake, you ready? Are we going? Okay, let's do this. All right, so everybody, welcome to the first SACOT virtual conference. Yeah! All right, that took me like 30 minutes to do. Anyway, thank you guys so much for coming out. We really appreciate you guys' support. And, to all the people here, you guys are the dedicated ones. You are the guys who are going to help SACOT and are going to help change the future of Texas. So I'm Jacob Rothfuss. I'm one of the co-presidents of SACOT.
Hey, guys. My name is Anna Vi, and I am your other co-president.
And we're going to start going through everything we're going to be doing here today. You guys aren't the only ones. If you guys noticed up on the screen, we had Houston and San Antonio also tuning in. That's the virtual part of the conference, that they're all going to be here too. So do we want to give a quick shout out to them, put them up on the screen? You guys aren't the only ones. If you guys noticed up on the screen, we had Houston and San Antonio also tuning in. That's the virtual part of the conference. They're all going to be here too. San Antonio is actually having us up on the big screen at an FTC competition.
Hey!
Yeah! All right, now we want to give a quick shout out to San Antonio. Let's switch to that one. Like I said, big FTC screen. The best setup, so All right. Yeah, that 10-second delay working wonders.
Bouncing off satellites.
And going through Twitch's 10-second delay, so that's cool.
So, as you guys may have seen, there is a delay on Twitch. It's about 10-15 seconds. But yeah, so not only do we have 3 nodes around Texas, we also have so many people tuning in virtually. So to all you guys out there, go ahead and say something in the chat. We'll shout you out. Brittany over there, if you want to wave. Brittany. That's Brittany. She's our production person. And if anything comes up in the chat, we'll be sure to get her to get our attention and we can announce that.
Yeah. Any questions you guys have, we'll make sure to answer. All right, so today we've got a whole bunch of stuff planned for you guys, but at the end of the day, you guys are going to be experts on SACOT and advocacy. It's going to be awesome. But to do that, we're going to have to teach you guys about what SACOT is, about Texas government, how to advocate, pitch, and all of that. So let's get into some of the first stuff we want to teach you guys, which is if you don't know about SACOT, you're about to learn about SACOT. Let's do this.
Welcome to SACOT 101.
There we go.
Woo! All right, so before we get into what exactly SACOT is, it's important to know why we do what we do here at SACOT. So a lot of the initiatives that we've been taking on have been based off of 3 major problems.
So the first one is that there's a whole bunch of STEM jobs being created in Texas, and there's not nearly enough people filling them. So as you can see, there's a whole bunch of stats up here that were actually predictions from a few years ago. Now we're actually in 2018. These have about kept up, and we really need to step up our game, get more people getting into these jobs.
So Jake just told you about how there was a huge lack of people filling the STEM jobs around Texas. And one of the reasons behind this is because we have a really big lack of STEM in communities all around Texas. So not everyone is as lucky as we are to be able to participate in robotics and take engineering and comp-sci classes. And one of the biggest things, internet and Wi-Fi access. So, for example, students in McAllen, Texas, they don't have internet at home, and so they have to, here you can see in the picture, they have to go to school and connect to their school's Wi-Fi just to access their homework. So addressing this problem of a lack of STEM in communities has been something that SACOT has been taking on since we started. And last year, we were actually advocating for something called the Classroom Connectivity Initiative. And good news, Governor Abbott signed this last year, and so now they're working on coming up with a plan to help students all over Texas have high-speed internet access.
Then the third problem.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
Woo!
give a round of applause. That's crazy cool. So the third problem is our STEM educators. Who here has taken a comp-sci or an engineering class or something like that? Okay, so pretty much everyone. Did everyone like their teachers? Were they awesome? Oof. Oh. Okay, so now we found the problem, right? A lot of these educators aren't necessarily trained in these fields, so they can't teach you the best. So part of our work here is we want to get better educators that really know what they're talking about, can make you guys better students. And we're not the only ones thinking this. There's one big name up there that you guys should all notice. Mark Zuckerberg, you guys know who he is? Yeah. So he's with us on this. He thinks we should teach computer science just like reading or writing because it is that important. And it's, you know, if you want a job now, that's a really important thing to know.
Okay, so we just listed 3 main problems. Does anyone know one of them? And we'll be giving out these cards. Where's Nicole? Yeah, so she has SACOT point cards where you can log into your dashboard and redeem those. So does anyone remember what the first problem was? Or just one of them?
We're giving out candy too.
Yeah, yes. Lack of internet. Yeah, so there's a lack of STEM in communities. Good job. Yes, yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we need qualified STEM teachers. And does anyone remember the last one?
Oof. All right, that's okay. So there was actually the first one. It's the lack of people to STEM fill jobs. That one's kind of weird, so.
Yeah, okay, so Jake, you can click the slide. Thank you.
So there's the 3 there, right?
Yeah.
Now, you guys are probably thinking, okay, that kind of sucks. There are 3 problems. What are we going to do about it? Well, that's the whole point. That's why we have all you guys here, because all the people in this room, all the people in San Antonio, Houston, and attending virtually in other places are here to help us change these things, to make our STEM education better and help people in the parts of the community that aren't represented make their STEM education better and improve their lives and their opportunities. Together, we can change the future of Texas.
Woo!
Yes!
Yes! Yeah. So that's exactly what we're doing here at SACOT. We want to give all Texas high school students a voice in their own STEM education.
All right, so we've been talking a whole bunch about like the problems, what SACOT's trying to do. We haven't actually talked about what SACOT is. So let's start with how SACOT helps Texas. We're going to educate local, state, and school governments about STEM education, help them understand why it's so important, showing them some of the stats that we just showed you guys, and then we're going to be advocating for legislation that's going to help us achieve those goals as we've been doing and as we will continue to do. And by giving a voice to the underserved communities that we've been talking about, we'll be able to change their opportunities and make Texas a better place for everyone.
All right, so Jake just talked about how SACOT helps Texas. And at this point, you might be thinking, okay, SACOT sounds really great, and it clearly helps Texas, but how does it help you guys as individuals? That's a perfectly okay question to ask, but being a part of SACOT gives you the opportunity to influence some of the political decisions made in our government through our legislator meetings. You also get the recognition for doing everything that we do as a part of SACOT. For example, coming to this conference, which you guys should all be recognized for. So good job on that. But I think the most important one is that you get the chance to make a direct impact on your community.
All right, so now what is SACOT? All right, let's get into it. So we're an organization of high school students, Anna.
Yeah, so we are all high school students here at SACOT, and we all share the same passion for STEM. Since we started SACOT a couple years ago, we've been targeting first teams like you guys because we know that you have the same passion for STEM and robotics that we do. However, in the future, we want to extend past first teams and give everyone in Texas, all students, all high school students in Texas, the chance to have a voice in their own STEM education. And hopefully we'll have representation from every congressional district in Texas.
Yeah, so we want to represent people from all over Texas. We want to have a dynamic set of members. That means people from all cultures, ethnic backgrounds, all races. And that means that all of those people are going to take on the responsibility of SACOT. You guys here are the representation of SACOT. When you guys go and talk to legislators, remember that you guys are going to represent us, and you guys are going to help make a difference. And like we said, you're going to get a lot of benefits out of it, but you do have that responsibility as a member.
Yeah. But one of the most important things that we do as SACOT, we're having some technical difficulties. I apologize. Here we go. All right, so like I said, one of the most important things that we do in SACOT is to have legislative conferences. So legislation is in session every odd-numbered year, and the point of these conferences is to reconvene as a membership body and make sure everyone is on the same page. So that means developing and finalizing our platform and brushing up on advocacy skills. And so, yeah, so the whole point of these conferences is to just make sure we all know what we're doing so we can be prepared when we go into our legislator meetings.
Now, you guys might have noticed when you walked in, you guys were signed up on the website. The website has a whole bunch of stuff to it, right? So you have your own account. You can get news on that stuff on that account. You can answer polls, which is going to help us understand what you guys think about all the policies and things that we do. And you can also go on forums, talk to other members and mentors about the stuff we talk about here today. And we're going to get more into it later, but that's the general idea. We'll get you guys answering polls and all this other stuff.
And I guess you could call this the SACOT dream. So our vision is to have, a couple years from now, 1,000 to 2,000 members involved in SACOT from all over Texas. And we want to have met with almost every legislator in the Austin government, Texas government. That was weird. We want to have met with almost every legislator in the government and have the SACOT name well known throughout the state.
Now, we've been talking about this a lot, legislators, advocacy, and if you don't know what all this is about yet, Don't worry, you'll know what it's about later. But the main idea here is that we're going to go talk to legislators and try to get them on board with our agenda, that we think STEM is really important, it should be put into legislation, and we should try to get more people into STEM fields. We need to try to solve the 3 problems we talked about before. And by being this huge, loud voice of high schoolers who are actually in that educational system, we can make a big difference. We can get them on our side. And that concludes the SACOT 101 presentation, guys. You now know about SACOT.
Woo! And we know that that was a lot, but you'll get the hang of it, and feel free to ask any questions whenever.
Yeah.
We're here to help.
And now, the next thing we got to talk to you guys about that you need to understand, who's just taking a government class, by the way? I'm curious. Okay, so not too many people. So this next one's going to be important. This is Texas government. It's a little weird, even if you're taking a government class. It's different. So to help explain that, I'm going to welcome up Irvi. Everybody help me welcome her up.
Yeah, Irvi!
All right.
You might have to lower the mic a little, just a little bit. Okay. All right. You want to introduce yourself, Irvi?
Okay. I'm Irvi. I'm a junior here at Westlake. I've been a part of FIRST for 3 years now, and I'm on the team 2468 Team Appreciate.
Yeah, and you guys already know who I am. My name's Anna again, so.
Okay. So what does SACOT stand for? The STEM Advocacy Conference of Texas, right? So what does advocacy mean?
Does anyone know? You get SACOT points. Don't read off the slide.
Yes, Joseph.
The individual or organizational projection of one group's ideas or opinions.
Wow.
Yeah,
Nice.
exactly. Good job.
Okay. Yeah, so essentially we have this idea or platform that we want to push through to our legislators because we want to get it accomplished. And if we have a lot of you guys talking about this one bill or one platform, it motivates our legislators to vote for it once it hits the floor. Now, what does S stand for? STEM, because we advocate for STEM-related bills and causes. Because we are FIRST, right? STEM is what we do. Now, federal versus state. At the federal level, they're more concerned with foreign affairs and regulating the entire country, while at the state level, they're concerned with public education, public health, and state economy. While laws can be passed at the federal level for STEM education, let's say, it won't necessarily specify funding for the state level, which is why it's much more efficient for us to go directly to the state. Oh, oops.
Okay, so now, although some of you may not have taken a government class yet, everyone knows the 3 branches of government. So once again, if you know one of them, raise your hand. You'll get some SACOT points. Who knows the first one? Yes. Executive. Yes, the executive branch. Okay, who knows another one? Yes, back there. The judicial branch. And who knows the final one? We'll go back there. Yes. Yes, the legislative branch. All right, good job. Okay, so, throwing gone wrong. So here at SACOT, we're going to focus on the legislative branch. So the legislative branch is split up into 2 parts, the House of Representatives and the Senate. The House of Representatives, or more specifically in Texas, has 150 members elected, and the Texas Senate has 31 elected members. Every odd-numbered year, they convene at the Capitol to start their legislative session.
So I'm sure you all have seen this video before. It's I'm Just a Bill by Schoolhouse Rock. So it's going to walk through the process of how a bill eventually becomes a law. So what we are concerned with is advocating to our legislators to vote for the bill that is still going to get voted for, yeah.
And before we watch this video, I encourage you guys to sing along, and I'm actually invite a special guest, Co-President Jacob Rothfuss. Get up here, show us your singing skills. You look really excited.
I'm so excited, Anna.
Yeah.
I'm excited. If you guys don't sing along with me, I'm going to go cry later, by the way.
So we're going to sing during the chorus, so you can listen when they're actually explaining the process.
As your body grows bigger,
Your mind must flower,
it's great to learn.
'cause knowledge is power.
It's Schoolhouse Rockin', the chip off the block of your favorite schoolhouse rock. I'm just a Bill.
Woo, you sure gotta climb a lot of steps to get to this Capitol building here in Washington. Well, I wonder who that sad little scrap of paper is.
I'm just a Bill, yes, I'm only a Bill, and I'm sitting here on Capitol Hill. Well, it's a long, long journey to the capital city. It's a long, long wait while I'm sitting in committee, but I know I'll be a law someday. At least I hope and pray that I will, but today I am still just a Bill.
Gee, Bill, you certainly have a lot of patience and courage.
Well, I got this far. When I started, I wasn't even a bill. I was just an idea. Some folks back home decided they wanted a law passed, so they called their local congressman, and he said, "You're right, there ought to be a law." Then he sat down and wrote me out and introduced me to Congress, and I became a bill. And I'll remain a bill until they decide to make me a law. I'm just a bill, yes, I'm only a bill, and I got as far as Capitol Hill. Well, now I'm stuck in committee, and I'll sit here and wait while a few key congressmen discuss and debate whether they should let me be a law. I hope and pray that they will, but today I am still just a bill.
Listen to those congressmen arguing. Is all that discussion and debate about you?
Yeah, I'm one of the lucky ones. Most bills never even get this far. I hope they decide to report on me favorably, otherwise I may die.
Die?
Yeah, die in committee. Oh, but it looks like I'm gonna live. Now I go to the House of Representatives and they vote on me.
If they vote yes, what happens?
Then I go to the Senate and the whole thing starts all over again.
Oh, no.
Oh, yes. I'm just a bill. Yes, I'm only a bill. And if they vote for me on Capitol Hill, well, then I'm off to the White House where I'll wait in a line with a lot of other bills for the president to sign. And if he signs me, then I'll be a law. How I hope and pray that he will. But today I am still just a bill.
You mean even if the whole Congress says you should be a law, the president can still say no?
Yes, that's called a veto. If the president vetoes me, I have to go back to Congress and they vote on me again, and by that time you're so
By
old.
that time, it's very unlikely that you become a law. It's not easy to become a law, is it?
No, but how I hope and pray that I will. But today I am still just a bill.
He signed your bill. Now you're a law.
Oh, yes.
The first thing that has to happen is for it to be filed. So a legislator will file a bill, and then it will go into the House, where the House votes on it. And if the majority of the representatives approve it, then it moves on to the Senate, where it goes through the same process. And if it's both approved in the House and the Senate, it moves on to the governor, where he has the power to either veto or approve it also. And hopefully, if it's approved by all three, the bill becomes a law. And that's what we want, especially for the STEM bills that we're advocating for.
Now introducing someone that has been with us from the very beginning, supporting SACOT from day one, Representative Donna Howard.
Yeah. Let's move this.
Hey, echo.
Yeah.
I love it. Hey, thank y'all so much for having me. I really appreciate being here, and I am so impressed with what this group has already done and continues to do. Here we have people from Dallas here, right? All right. Any place else, or are the rest of you from here? From here? But you're connected virtually with Houston and San Antonio. That is so awesome. One of the things that y'all helped advocate for this last time that actually passed that's going to make this even better next year when you do it is we were able to get some funding into our budget last session, which would have been in 2017. As you heard, we meet every odd year because we're very odd. We met last year and we passed a budget that included I think it was $25 million that was matched by the E-rates at the federal level to the tune of about $250 million to help get broadband connectivity to every school campus, public school campus in this state, which is awesome. And we're 99% there. So you guys that was one of the things that y'all talked about when you came to the legislature before, and that actually happened. And now we've got to get connected to the classroom and get the devices for the students. There's lots more to do, but we're on the right path here, and this was a huge step forward. So next year when you do your conference, you can, or next 2 years, whenever y'all end up doing it, you can connect virtually, hopefully, with multiple schools across the state so that everybody can be a part of what you're trying to do here, which I think is just fabulous. So I'm just going to talk for a minute here about the legislative process. You already heard about Bill, even though you haven't seen him yet. You're going to see that later. But the whole point is that we have legislation that to you probably sounds good. It sounds good to me. It may sound good to some other folks. But there are other people who might have a problem with it, and that's the whole point of the political process. You have people looking at what kinds of bills they want to pass to do something, and others who are kind of pushing back at it, and you have that debate, and you have people like yourselves come in and testify and give us your opinion, because this is supposed to be representative government, and then we figure out if we're going to pass it or not. The real challenge here is, there's probably several, but the main challenge is money. That has a lot to do with a lot of what we do at the state legislature. And one of the things, one of the main bills y'all worked on last time that did not pass was trying to change the way we fund the tech courses by moving tech applications into our career technology part of the curriculum. And the reason that was important is because the state provides more funding, a higher weight of funding to the CTE classes. So we wanted to get more funding into our STEM education, and that was one of the ways we were planning to do it. The price tag attached to that for our 2-year budget, we meet every other year, remember, so we have a 2-year budget, was something like $45 million. A lot of money. In the big budget we have, which was about $210 billion for a 2-year budget, it seems a fairly small amount, but I can tell you every little bit is looked at because there's a lot of competition for those dollars. So the price tag was such that we couldn't get that through. But there was legislation that did pass by Representative Bernal from San Antonio. Shout out to Bernal in San Antonio. Yeah. And his legislation created a cybersecurity pathway. And there's some recommendations from a task force that's meeting now, that are just met, that's going to talk about how that'll be implemented. I don't know how he did it, but he got it in there without having a fiscal note. So in other words, it wasn't supposed to cost anything. Somehow, that's okay because he got it passed. And we're now on the path to doing that. And hopefully, that will allow us to expand and bring in the other STEM programs into the career technology stream. So, see, you've already been effective at what you've done. And we know we've got a lot more to do this next session to keep the ball rolling. I already talked about making sure that not only are we getting the broadband to the districts, but we've got to get it to the individual campuses and to the classrooms. We did pass some legislation that also included a tech lending library. I know that SACOT has been also looking at how do we help those school districts that don't have access to the same resources. And so this tech lending library is to do just that, to provide some financial assistance so that school districts that do not have the resources of this school district and some others will be able to get devices that they need. So that is a really big step forward too. So there were a lot of good things that happened. We're going to keep moving forward on this. We need to have more focus on STEM. I know you had the quote a while ago from Zuckerberg. He says it better than I do. What I've been saying, because I'm older, is that back when I was your age or younger, I took typing, and everybody took typing. That was our STEM course. You know, our coding class was typing. Everybody should be taking coding now. Everybody should do that. And there's been another effort to try to bring consciousness raising to the legislature. We had Hour of Code last year on the floor of the Texas House, which was awesome because it had some legislators participate, including myself, looking like an idiot, walking around trying to do the virtual reality thing, not knowing what I was doing and like this. But it's raising our consciousness about it. It's educating us about what we need to know so we can help you prepare for the future. Let me just tell you something about the legislature. I know that it was talked about how you come and talk to us. I think it's important to always remember that it's representative government and that we're supposed to be there working for you and representing you. You should always feel comfortable coming and talking about the things that are important to you. I know it can be a little intimidating sometimes, and I really appreciate the guidelines that y'all have in this little booklet that I just saw, the little folder, because you do want to come in a respectful way. You want to be dressed appropriately. You want to interact appropriately, be respectful. But at the same time, I think you need to be real confident in the fact that this is your government, and you have a right to be there to talk about the things you care about. The other thing I will tell you is, you probably know more than most of us do about the issue. The legislature here in Texas skews toward the older end of the age groups. And also, I would say that we also represent limited segments of our population. So if you think about it, we've got a part-time legislature that meets for 5 months every other year. It's a very intensive 5 months, and then we have interim hearings in between. You have to do campaigning and all those other things. How do most people find the time or have the kind of job that allows them to do that? Do you think most of your teachers here at the high school would be able to take off for 5 months every other year to go to the Capitol and then be able to come back and have their job? And then, oh, by the way, there's a meeting this month and there's 2 meetings next month that you have to go to. You can see it makes it very difficult for a lot of people to participate as public servants. And so what you have is a legislative body that, as I said, is typically older, although there's some young people coming in, like Representative Bernal, but they're typically older and typically more affluent, either have their own business that allows them to be flexible and delegate to others, has a spouse that can support them, as I do, have some kind of independent wealth that allows them to do this. Now, you can see that cuts out a huge part of Texas, because most, I would say, I don't know what the exact numbers are, but the percentage of Texans who don't fit into what I just described is probably larger. So my point being, we're older, we don't understand as much about STEM as you do. So when you come in to talk to us, you can be assured that except for a handful of legislators, you know more than we do, and you can be there to help educate us. And also recognize, especially when you're talking about advocating for those who may not have as many resources, that though I hope the majority of us are sensitive to that, the majority of us haven't lived that experience. And there's something to be said for living an experience as opposed to just knowing about it. So those things I think are important to keep in mind. I mentioned the money. That's the big thing. We have to follow the money. We have to talk about the money. Public school finance is probably going to be the biggest thing we talk about at the upcoming legislative session. We have a new Speaker of the House who is going to be voted on when we start in January. And why that's important is because the Speaker of the House is the person who makes the assignments of who the committee chairs are and who's going to be on the committees. So for you to know who you need to lobby and advocate before and talk to, you have to wait until those appointments are made, and all of us are kind of in the dark right now. We don't know what to expect yet. So that's going to be a big change, and that's going to be an important thing to watch as you're preparing your legislative agenda and what you want to do when you come over and talk to legislators. So anyway, I could talk about a lot more. I guess I just wanted to give you that overview, and just make sure you know that it's very important that you stay connected and committed, not only to advocating and lobbying, but also to the whole political process, because elections matter. The people that you elect to represent you need to be people who share your values and goals that you want to work with in representing you. So you need to also make sure you register to vote. And how old do you have to be? Oh, come on. 18. Thank you. Wow, y'all were very loud a while ago when you were asking questions about tech. No government classes. Whoa. Okay, 18. I actually had legislation the last 2 sessions that we haven't been able to get through yet, even though it had bipartisan support, to say that if you turn 17 and you're going to be 18 by the November election, that you can actually vote in the March primary, because that's when we actually select who's going to be on the November ballot. So if you just come in at 18 and vote in the November ballot, which I would want you to do, but you would be voting for people that you didn't help select. So you have your Democratic and Republican primaries in March, and if you are going to be 18, but you're still 17 in March, this bill will allow you to go ahead and vote, as I think there's 11 other states that do. But there are other states that do this. So, you know, there's precedent set, and we can do this. So pay attention to the election process, too. Make sure that you and the people you work with understand how important it is to vote. We had a huge turnout at this last election. It was still low. It was huge relative to what it's been in the past. We need to have people understand that their votes actually matter, that who represents you and makes these decisions that affect you, that actually matters. So I hope that'll be part of your advocacy work as well. Make sure people get registered to vote and that they vote. So I think there was supposed to be questions, but I don't see the questioner. Oh, yeah, so let's thank you.
If anyone has questions, you can go ahead and ask, and I'll make sure to call on people. And if there's anyone in the chat who wants to ask questions, Brittany will let us know.
Okay.
And we'll get those to her. So anyone have any questions? Yeah, let's go over here.
How important is the State Board of Education to the kind of policies that we're looking at?
How important is the State Board of Education to these policies? Great question, because they are very important. The State Board of Education is composed of 15 members who are elected, and if you think about the fact that we have 31 senators, that means that the State Board of Education members cover twice the area of a senator, so it's a large population that they cover. hopefully that means that they're looking at a variety of districts when they come there. But the thing about the State Board of Education is a lot of times people don't pay as much attention to that election. And sometimes we've had people that have come into the State Board who may not have had the same goals that you guys are talking about. Right now, though, I'm really pleased that we have a State Board of Education and the president, the chair of the State Board, who recognizes the value of STEM, who recognizes the value of coding, who is actually making sure that this is one of the top priorities that they have. So the State Board of Education can't make law, but they make rules about what happens in schools. They develop the curriculum. They develop the education standards. So they would be involved with making decisions about career technology and the pathways there. The legislature can make some laws, but the SBOE is involved with that as well. They're involved with textbook selection. Oh, which I didn't mention. One of the other things we accomplished last time was getting open education resources as part of what the instructional materials are that can be selected by schools. And I don't know about you, I'm sure you know a lot more about it than I do, but to me, this is a no-brainer. This gives you better content, and it does it for less cost. And if we're truly trying to be fiscally responsible, that's one of the ways to go. So the State Board of Education is involved with that as well. So they have a lot to do with what happens with policy. So it's important to pay attention to them too. Thank you for that.
Other questions? Jeff, what does it mean for a bill to be left pending in committee?
It means it's dead, basically. Yeah, the bill process is once the bill is filed, it gets assigned to a committee. There's a committee hearing. The committee has to vote it out of committee before it can go to the House floor. So if somebody wants to let you have a hearing because they want you to think that they're trying to be fair about your bill, but they really don't want your bill to pass, it gets left pending in committee. So that's code for it's a dead bill. Yeah. Poor old dead Bill. I saw him sitting on the steps a while ago. He was really sad about that. He was probably left pending.
I'm sure you guys have other questions, but we're actually going to have a Q&A with Representative Howard and our next keynote speaker in a little bit. So hold your questions for now. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Let's give her a round of applause. All right, so, oh God, I can fix this. Give me 2 seconds. I mentioned our next keynote speaker. She has also been with us from the beginning, helping us out, helping us understand all this stuff we're explaining to you today. We could not be having these kind of conferences without her. She's a consultant for TechNet and an incredibly intelligent person. Please help me welcome up Mrs. Caroline Joyner.
I'm sorry I came rushing in late and I didn't get to hear everything you said, so I apologize if I repeat anything that you said. And I literally came running in, so sorry. So I've been working with SACOT for a couple of years to make sure that we are aligned on legislative initiatives. I represent TechNet, which is an association of tech executives. So we represent the major employers here in Texas. So we work really closely on, thank you, on education issues because workforce really matters. Tech companies can't invest and grow here unless they can have the workforce here that they need with the skills they need to do the jobs. So I want to run through a couple of things we worked on last session and how that would tee up issues for this session. As Representative Howard mentioned, big focus for us has been to get weighted funding for the tech apps courses. These courses are all your computer science courses. I can hear myself in the background, so I think it's working. Okay. Is that better? Okay, big focus has been getting weighted funding for computer science classes and all the courses in the Tech Apps chapter. So that is all your computer science courses, and then robotics, digital apps, digital forensics, web design. So it's 16 courses in a chapter. Those courses are not being offered very much, but there have been duplicative courses created in the CTE chapter. So our focus has been to move those courses into CTE so they get a weighted funding. As Representative Howard mentioned, there's been a challenge to do that because every time they do that, that has gotten a huge fiscal note. As we work in a really conservative state, any bill that has a big number associated with it tends to fall apart in committee. We were able to get a bill passed last session, HB 3593. This was a bill passed by Representative Diego Bernal. It tasked the State Board of Education to create a cybersecurity pathway. This required them to select 5 tech apps courses to create this pathway. We worked really closely with TEA over the last session to focus on those computer science courses. We believe those courses are foundational to a cybersecurity pathway. And the good news is, just recently they agreed that there are 4 computer science courses that will be part of that new cybersecurity pathway. That means 4 courses with the highest enrollment now have weighted funding as of right now. So we will be able to expand access to those courses immediately. But moving forward in the next session, we need to make sure we take care of the rest of those tech apps courses and get those courses also moved into CTE so that they've got the weighted funding as well. We don't want to leave behind courses like robotics. So a big focus for us for next session, and would love your help on, is to make sure that we get those remaining courses moved over. The good news that's happened in the interim is that we might not have a huge fiscal note on that bill moving forward. The TEA is undertaking an effort to rework how they offer CTE. CTE gets a lot of dollars from the federal government from a program called Perkins. And the Perkins has been reworked to focus on high need and high wage career and technology courses. So they were going to rework CTE at TEA to get rid of some courses that aren't aligned to industry needs. So if they move all these tech apps courses over, it's unlikely that will have a huge impact on total enrollment of CTE, so the fiscal note should be 0. So there will be a bill filed to move those remaining courses over, and I'll let you know as soon as I have a bill number on it, and would love your support. Any questions on that? Yes.
Are like computer science classes that fall under AP also included in those bills, or is AP computer science separate?
No, AP, there are 2 AP courses that have already been approved to be moved over. CS1, APCSA, APCS principles have been approved to be moved over. We're trying to also get that principles course moved over as well. And the other course created in that pathway will be a capstone course in cybersecurity. So there's a few CS courses that we need to also get moved over. There's a discrete mathematics for computer science and a few others. But yeah, you're right, those AP courses have been included in that pathway. As Representative Howard mentioned, we also need to make sure that we protect dollars in the technology and the instructional materials allotment. That is what your schools are going to use to buy equipment for these classes. The technology and instructional materials allotment is a dual purpose fund that schools use to purchase technology and textbooks. Over the last, 5-6 years, spending in that allotment on technology has decreased as the cost of textbooks has continued to rise. And we heard from the SBOE when they met a couple months ago, actually a couple weeks ago, that the proclamation is going to be so big that there will be very little money left for technology in that fund. So we'd have great courses offered, but some school districts not have the option to purchase the technology they need to offer those courses. So we need to make lots of efforts this session to protect the technology and instructional materials allotment and make sure that it is used as intended. Any questions on that? Another big issue for us too is making sure that teachers have the training they need to offer STEM courses. A big piece of that is if we increase access to computer science courses, we don't have enough computer science teachers. So we need to have a statewide effort to provide funds to make sure teachers have the training they need to get certified to teach computer science. We also need to make sure that our universities are producing enough math and science teachers and support efforts at higher ed to make sure that happens. Another thing that we're going to be supporting, we'd like your support on as well, is expanding access to internships and apprenticeships so that students can have some real world experience and access to some of those STEM jobs. Sometimes you got to see the job to know what it is. So expanding access to internships and apprenticeships and getting rid of any barriers that companies may have to being able to offer those. Yes? High school students. We'd like to be able to. There are some barriers that that companies have to have some liability issues and have issues having to be able to pay students. We want to make sure we clear that path so that if companies like that I represent want to offer you a job, that there's no barrier to do that. Yeah.
Legislatively, how are you guys going about getting something like that implemented or maybe easier?
Yeah, there will be bills filed on everything that I mentioned, and as soon as I have a bill number, I'll share those with you.
Okay, awesome.
Are you talking about making sure that computer science teachers have the certification? It's a huge gap. And right now, the University of Texas, the UT STEM Center, has done a really good job at training computer science teachers. Teachers have to go through a course to get certified to teach computer science. They get funding from the federal government to offer that program, and it has always been oversubscribed. A lot more teachers want to take it than they can afford to offer it. And their funding has dried up. And so we have to make sure that they continue to get the funding that they need to offer those courses, but also further expand those offerings so that we can just not be happening here in Austin. So yeah, we've got to do a better job there, and we will have a bill filed this session that creates a statewide fund so that those teachers can get certified to teach computer science. And Representative Howard might know more about the ALT certification too. We also need to make sure that we have a way to get software engineers who could want to teach these courses who may not have a teacher certification in the classroom to pair with a classroom teacher so that we can get that done. And Microsoft has a program called TEALS where they've got hundreds of software engineers who'd like to work in the classroom, and they've had some regulatory barriers to do that. And Microsoft has, I think I had 100 ready to go that we couldn't get into the classroom.
I have one more question.
Sure.
So as a consultant for TechNet, could you talk to us a little bit about how the fact that there's a huge conglomerate of companies that all are pursuing this one thing helps them get their goals done, similar to how SACOT has a huge list of members and teams that are helping them get their goals reached?
Sure. Yeah, TechNet is an association of companies, and most of them are competitors, fierce competitors in the marketplace, but they come to TechNet to work on issues that will benefit all of them. And so the workforce issues are a part of that. So we have a session, we've been having it for the last couple of months, to compare notes on what do we need changed or fixed, or what's your wish list, so you can continue to be successful here in Texas. And so that's how we came with some of the priorities I just went through. It's here's what our collective priorities are, and then we work closely together. TechNet is the organizer, but they all have their own employees and their own lobbyists and their own efforts, and we will do similar things that you're going to do. It's making sure that we provide them the information about what bills are moving, and then have them deploy those resources directly into those offices.
All right, so we're actually going to have a Q&A session with Representative Howard and Caroline Joyner quick. So let's get that set up, and you guys can ask questions for both of them, for one or the other, whatever you guys would like to do. So, yeah, teachers are both you guys. And can you get that mic set up? Yeah, it's a little weird, right?
Sorry about that.
Awesome. Yeah, you should be able to adjust that a little bit if you'd like. All right,
good.
awesome. I'll make sure to do that. Okay, got it. Yeah. Okay, so does anyone have any questions for either of our keynote speakers here? Yeah, what's up, Ethan?
So what can SACOT do to further STEM and STEM education?
All right, so what can SACOT do to further STEM and STEM education?
Well, I guess I'll start, but I'm actually going to defer to Caroline, who knows more of the nuts and bolts than I do. I think what we've been talking about since we've been here is looking at how do we make sure that STEM is incorporated throughout the curriculum, that it's recognized that coding is a basic language that all students need now, that recognizes that we have to invest in the necessary infrastructure that supports a quality STEM education. You know, some of this obviously requires money. There's no question about that. But not all of it does. Part of it has to do with how we align our curriculum. And we also talked about the faculty and teaching staff. I think part of the challenge we've had with the alternative certification is that there is a group of people, there are a group of people that, especially in the education field, who want to make sure that whoever comes into the classroom not only has the content expertise, but also has the pedagogy, that knows how to manage a classroom and teach the students. I'm sure all of you can think of examples of teachers you've had that are awesome. They're really good at teaching. And then I think you could probably think of maybe one or two that weren't so awesome. Yeah. And so the concern is that we want to have the content knowledge as well as the teaching skills. And I think that's where we get kind of the pushback. But certainly professional development is a huge part of what we need to do to make sure that we permeate the entire public education system with STEM across the board.
I think one of the most impactful things that SACOT can do is talk to your representatives directly. They hear from companies, they hear from lobbyists all the time. When they hear from students who are their constituents, they are going to be a lot more responsive to that. So make sure you stay aligned with us. We'll give you information about the bills that are moving. I'm happy to talk to you constantly during the legislative session to keep you posted on when you need to engage. But the way you can be most impactful, I think, is understanding who your representative and talking to them directly. They are going to listen to you as their constituent. They want, you are the future employees, the innovators. They want to make sure you're taken care of.
SACOT came and talked to me, and I'm here. There you go.
Have we got another question?
So I know we've already gone one step down from the federal government to the Texas state government.
Some of us would say that's a step up, but go ahead.
Going another step, is there a lot of value in city governments, or going even further, even more local?
Oh, absolutely, especially if you're talking about locally elected school boards. Oh, I'm sorry. He's asking about, we've talked some about the congressional level, the federal level, state level. Is it important to go to the local level as well? And absolutely, your elected school board are your representatives too. And they make a lot of decisions about what happens in your individual school district, where you can maybe have some input, and I think you probably have here in the Eanes School District. I know that the school board is very much behind what y'all are doing and are aware of what you're doing. So also, though, there's things that can be done sometimes at both the city and the county level of government where you have elected representatives. Sometimes that has to do with funding. So right now, here in the Austin area, both the city of Austin and Travis County appropriate certain dollars that are helpful to the school districts in a general way, not necessarily about tech at this point, but about providing mental health services, about providing parent support specialists in some of the elementary schools that are lower income schools. So your local elected bodies can have an impact on the schools, and I would challenge you to be creative about what it is that you think you could go to them for.
I completely agree with that, and I think you also need to pay attention to what's happening at the State Board of Education, where you have a locally elected representative.
We had a question about that a while ago, and yes, absolutely, State Board of Education.
Most people don't pay attention to what's happening in there, and they make a lot of decisions about what the content in your curriculum looks like that are very important to you.
All right, another question? What's up? How is new legislation actually implemented in schools?
Wow, how is new legislation actually implemented in schools? You know, any new legislation is typically implemented by the governing agency or by like for instance, this school district would have a connection to the Texas Association of School Boards, the Texas Association of School Administrators to help guide them, but also they have the Texas Education Agency, which lets them know what the new legislation is and what they're going to be required to do. So this is an ongoing thing that happens through these agencies after every legislative session to inform the school districts about what happened in the last legislative session so that they'll be in compliance with the new rules. So that's basically how that would happen.
Yeah, it's a long process, and just because policy's on the books doesn't mean the districts are going to implement it across the board. We have legislation, we have policy in Texas and statute that requires schools to offer computer science. Less than 30% of them do, because it was a mandate without any resources put behind it.
Oh, thank you for saying that. That's a good point. Sometimes legislation passes and we go, hooray, we passed it. This is going to happen. We're going to have computer science in every school, but I told you how important money is. You always have to follow the money as well, because if we pass a bill but we don't pass it in the appropriations bill and we don't fund it, it's very difficult for things to be implemented. So, as Caroline said, it's on the books that it's supposed to be happening, but there's no money to make it happen. So, that's important too.
So we have a question from the chat. If you don't mind, I'm going to take this so I can read it off quick. So, question from the chat from Savni Lay. Seems like a lot of focus is placed on computer science in high school. What about other engineering skills, such as electrical, mechanical, CAD, that students should be learning on as well?
We have a big focus on making sure that what's offered in CTE courses aligns to industry needs, and making sure that CTE is high quality, aligned to high wage, high demand. And the, TEA is working in that as well. Because the federal Perkins dollars that I mentioned before, it's the federal fund that is provided at a per student basis for CTE courses, will now only flow to courses that will align to high wage, high need. So we should always focus on making sure those CTE courses, on some of the things she mentioned, are aligned to industry and are rigorous courses.
And there have been efforts to come up with engineering pathways that make sense. And I don't know enough about it to really address it specifically, but absolutely the questioner is correct. That's a part of what we want to be focused on as well. I had somebody visit my office the other day who is an engineer, and who was talking about the required courses you have to have in high school for graduation, looking at the typical Algebra 2 calculus pathway, not necessarily being the pathway for all the fields of study that we want to have happen. So for instance, I'm a nurse. It's considered a field of the sciences, not necessarily STEM. Is it better for somebody like me to have taken Algebra 2 and calculus, or perhaps should I be looking at some analytical courses, some statistical courses that I would apply in my line of work, my field of study more? So I think there's a lot of different things we need to be looking at here, and as Caroline said, we're very slow to move. It takes a long time for things to happen, so even if you don't see immediate results with what you're doing, be assured that you're laying the groundwork for it happening eventually.
And that's why I think the technology and instructional materials allotment is so important. That is the fund where your schools will have access to dollars to pay for technology in the classroom. So if you want a project-based, hands-on engineering course, you have to have access to the money to do that. So let's stay focused on protecting the technology and instructional materials allotment this session from any cuts, any further cuts, so that districts have the flexibility to buy technology. And it wasn't called the technology and instructional materials allotment. So Representative Howard renamed it last session.
But I'm going to say something that's somewhat politically incorrect, and I know y'all are broadcasting this, so anyway, I'm going to do it anyway. And I don't know any of you in this room who may be connected with the textbook industry, but part of the challenge we also have at the legislature is powerful industries who want to protect their turf. And though there's a value, obviously, to textbooks, and we're not talking about eliminating textbooks, we are talking about a disruption of the industry, with our open education resources. We're talking about using new, what we think are better ways of reaching the outcomes we want. And that requires that we look differently at how we appropriate the funds and distribute them. But we have the politics of the industries wanting to protect their area. So there's that kind of thing you should be aware of also. Whenever you're talking about something that requires funding, it's important to understand all the different stakeholders who may be coming at that same thing from a different perspective. The more you understand the stakeholders and the players, the better you are at strategizing what you want to do to get your perspective the one that ultimately wins.
Do you have any classes where you use a traditional textbook anymore? A few?
So they're all online as well.
So most districts, because they think they have to, will purchase all of the textbooks on the list and then store
they're
them.
expensive.
And then store them somewhere. And that's dollars that's not going to be spent to get the content that you need that's more dynamic, to buy the computers that you need, and to train your teachers.
It might be interesting to kind of just do a little survey of your own campus, see what textbooks have been selected and purchased and where they're housed, if they're actually with students, being used by students, or even doing a survey of students who uses their textbook, and get some kind of data that you could share.
Because, we're not asking for more money in a session where you're always fighting for dollars. We're asking that the money that's already appropriated per student be spent how intended, not to put textbooks in warehouses or closets.
And not to beat a dead horse, but one more thing about textbooks and the State Board of Education. As I said, they do select the textbooks that they say meet the curriculum standards, the teaching standards. And so they're on an approved list, if you will. The reason this is a big challenge for us this time is it's one of the biggest purchases they're going to be making because it's for English language arts, which requires a huge amount of textbooks normally and covers the entire state. And the thing about it is they only do this purchasing like once every 10 years. So what they're going to purchase this time is going to be in place for 10 years. Are y'all, what, 17 in here? 17, 18? 10 years. Golly, that's a long time from now. Think where you're going to be in 10 years. Way past worrying about this stuff. So these decisions that we make now are really important to future students as well as to y'all.
Especially because a lot of the content that they're going to be purchasing in a textbook is off license and free.
All right, we have another question from the chat. We have a new production. Okay, so Dan Mance wants to know that there are some fantastic programs in other states funded by Perkins that focus on robotics and advanced manufacturing. These programs fall under CTE and lead the industry certifications. They benefit both students pursuing STEM degrees as well as those directly entering the workforce. I would be happy to share them with Donna and Caroline. These states are preparing their students for manufacturing jobs. I think you all agree that we really want Texas to fall behind. We don't want Texas to fall behind. I'm sorry, that's my bad.
Could not agree more, and that's why I think it's imperative that we move the tech apps courses into CTE so they can get the Perkins dollars.
Oh, did you guys not?
Oh, you didn't hear the question? Come back
I'll
over.
say it out loud once, just because.
Come over here.
Yeah, give me a mic.
Give me a mic.
All right, so Dan Mance was talking about how there are some fantastic programs in other states funded by Perkins, which they've been talking about a whole bunch here, that focus on robotics and advanced manufacturing. These programs fall under CTE, what we've been talking about a lot as well. It gets more funding. And they lead to industry certifications. They benefit both students pursuing STEM degrees as well as those directly entering the workforce, and that these states are preparing their students for manufacturing jobs. I think we all agree that we don't want Texas to fall behind.
And you heard Caroline say that absolutely that's why we need it to be part of CTE. But I will also say it's important, and you can push this, because of our strategic plan we have in place for higher education in this state. It's called 60 by 30 Texas. And that means, and what it stands for, is that by the year 2030, we want to have 60% of our young adults between the ages of like 24 and 35, something like that. Our young adults, 60% of them with some kind of post-secondary certificate or degree so that they can be prepared for the jobs, not only of the future, but for now. Okay, 60%. We've had this strategic plan in place for the past couple of years. When it started, we were at 38%. I think the number we're at now is about 42%. We have a real challenge to meet that goal. And one of the things that resonates with a lot of legislators, you know, I told you that a lot of us are older, and a lot of us are from an era where manufacturing was more important to society. We lost that, but it's come back in. There's a lot of support for doing things that increase manufacturing jobs in this state. So if you have goals like this, like the questioner just had, focusing on how that would help us with 60 by 30 Texas, and focusing on how that would increase manufacturing jobs, I think would be a real plus to put into your toolkit.
Off topic, but one thing I want to add while we're in this room, it's we need to be mindful of the urban-rural divide, especially in the delivery of education. A lot of you guys are going to be from big schools, big districts with deep resources. We need to make sure when we're talking to the legislature, where most of the representatives represent rural areas, that we need to make sure that we can make it equal. So you can you could have a STEM or a computer science job in any small town. So we need to make sure that we can, when we talk to representatives from represent small towns, that we're not going to leave them behind, that these jobs are for their students too, and we don't always make that connection.
Absolutely, and what y'all are doing and advocating for is indeed trying to make sure that all students across this state have access, and as Caroline said, you can actually get jobs now in those small communities that are good jobs that weren't available to you before, all because of technology. So yes, it's a good way to appeal to the legislators to make sure that you're talking about their communities as well and why it's so important to the future of the people in their communities.
Okay, so I have one more question for Bossi. I'm going to say it once here, and then I'm going to say it into the microphone. Is this connected? Yes, please. Okay, cool. So the one thing I want to know from you guys is a quick little wrap-up of what you think SACOT should do to achieve a lot of the goals we've been talking about.
Do to achieve their goals. What you're doing now is educating yourselves on what the issues are and staying in close contact with us about what those issues are. You need to track the bills through the process and activate your resources accordingly. You need to show up, make the rounds with the offices. It's not a good idea to show up only when you have an ask. So I'd go visit offices early. You can visit them in the district now. Introduce yourself, explain what your priorities are, and then when a bill is moving through the process, call, email, and visit, and make sure they know what your priorities are.
Yeah, everything she said I would agree with. You know, the timing is such that the best time to visit and introduce yourself is during the interim, because once session starts, you can still go and visit and introduce yourselves, but there's going to be more of a time crunch and more people showing up. Plus, y'all here in Austin, this is not a problem for you because we're here in Austin, but for students across the rest of the state, their reps are primarily going to be in Austin during session rather than in their district back home. So the interim is the time to visit when possible, but absolutely anytime you should feel free to come and introduce yourselves. But I think her point is a good one. You're not just coming to ask for something, you're also coming to just make sure they know who you are and what you care about. We know to call on you. And I don't know how often y'all are having these conferences and how we might even have some different types of virtual meetups. But what I would love to see at some point, and maybe we can do it during the session, I would love to see us do something similar to today, but be connected to some of the other districts with their state reps present and let us all have a conversation together. I think that would be awesome.
Thank you guys so much. Thank you so much. All right. Let's give them one more round of applause. That was really awesome. That they come and talk to us. Yeah, so Yeah, that sounds awesome. So let's get them up here. We're going to get a quick picture. Bear with us for a second. This is, great to put on social media and stuff like that. So. Oh, wait, are there any social media people from their teams here today? I'm curious. No? I know. Do you guys do social media? So you know what I'm talking about, yeah.
Do we? Oh.
What's really cool is you guys are behind yourselves and you don't have Okay, we got double shots of you all.
1, 2, 3.
Oh,
All right, awesome. Thank you guys so much.
thank y'all. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, one more round of applause. All right, so you guys might notice they talked a whole bunch about different bills that we could be supporting, allotments that we could be talking about, and all these different things that we would go up and talk to our legislators about. So we're actually going to talk to you guys now about the research we have done on a lot of these topics, as well as what we think SACOT should focus on, and we're actually going to get your guys' input on this. So I'm going to let my friend here introduce himself.
I'm Mark. I'm a junior here at SACOT. I've been in FIRST for a few years now and have joined SACOT recently. So like Jake said, we're going to talk about platform, and let's go ahead and get started.
All right, awesome. So who here knows what a platform is? Yeah, what's up? Yeah, so that's exactly right. It's all the stuff that SACOT is trying to convince our legislators of. We're going to go and advocate to them, and hopefully that changes their opinion. And I have a definition up there if anyone wanted a textbook definition.
So where should we focus our energies as SACOT? Like we said, we have a lot of interest in the legislator, but as Caroline and Representative Howard mentioned, we can also focus on a more local level and look at how we can make change in our community. And we can also work directly with our own schools and districts and see what kind of work can be done there. So what I've been doing here for the past few months at SACOT is looking through all of these different ideas that have been going through the legislator and other advocacy groups like our own and seeing what they're interested in doing. And there's a lot of stuff out there. There's a lot of information, many, many ideas. So what I've done is distill them all into a few points that I think would be in our best interest and where we should really focus our energy as a group. So here are some of my own recommendations as to what our platform should consist of.
Yeah, and if anyone's interested, Mark has been studying up on this pretty hard, so he can answer a lot of your questions.
So my first recommendation here is what's known as a full review of the technology application TEKS. And if you don't know what the TEKS are the education standard that is set by the State Board of Education, and that's what specifically tells schools what their students need to know and what they need to learn in the classrooms. So in 2020, the State Board of Education is scheduled to either do a full review or a streamlining of these TEKS for technology application. And like our speakers mentioned, technology application are courses like computer science, digital design, digital forensics. So right now, those TEKS are a little bit outdated, and they're not up to the standards that the STEM industry wants to see in future employees. So in 2020, the State Board of Education is going to assemble what they call a work group to come up with new recommendations for what is going to be in these TEKS. So it would be in SACOT's interest and the STEM education interest in general to make sure that this review is very meaningful and people on this work group are willing to put forward ideas that have real impact on our education. Of course, we need STEM funding. How many of you guys have faced some sort of monetary issue in running your robotics team? You've run out of money, you wanted to buy more. We are the future of the American economy, and we truly do deserve more funding to support our efforts and our interests. So I see three ways that we can go about doing this. We can actively push legislation through the state Senate that specifically says give money to after-school programs like FIRST. We can also work with our own school districts and see how they can redirect budgeting to give us a little bit more and help us in our efforts. And also, as our speakers mentioned again, we can have repeated and sustained meetings with our own representatives and make sure that they know that we're here, that we matter, and that we need money. A third point that both our speakers talked about is getting the CTE weighted funding for technology application courses. So if schools get, let's say, 30% more funding per student enrolled in a technology application course, then they'll of course be more motivated to push students into those classes and to encourage them to take them. That's exactly what we want, because it'll provide the STEM industry with more educated and able students. So last year, or I guess 2 years ago, HB 395 was passed, which did exactly this, but unfortunately it was left pending in committee. And we heard what that means. It's essentially not going anywhere. So if we can reintroduce a similar bill or somehow revive HB 395, that would be a great something to do in our effort.
All right, so as you guys heard, and it's just a quick little wrap up, a lot of what he talked about is about money. We're trying to get more money for STEM education. And what we actually want to do is we want to have everyone have a discussion, people in Houston, San Antonio, Austin, people attending virtually, talking about what you think about what Mark just said, all the ideas he gave out. Maybe you guys have some ideas of your own for helping us get funding or to help further STEM education. We'd be happy to hear those as well. I want you to talk about those in your notes, at your tables, and we want to hear how you guys think we're going to achieve these goals. So whether they're ones you came up with yourself, whether they're what Mark said, whether you heard them from one of our keynote speakers, we want to know what do you guys think about those, how you want to get them done. So that being said, I want people on chat who are listening virtually to talk to us, talk in chat. All the nodes, I want you guys to start talking with groups of people, Houston, San Antonio. And at the end of this, we're going to take some of our best ideas, we're going to talk about them, and eventually we're actually going to do a poll on them on the website so we can all decide what we want to do, because you guys are the ones who are going to be making the decision. Awesome. All right, so let's get started. Let's get people talking. Let's start having a discussion about this stuff.
Yeah.
Okay, so just at your tables, guys, I just want you guys to start talking about this stuff. If we can have some 2468 people come around, they're going to help discussion, really understanding what's going on. So yeah, let's get started with that. What do you guys think of what Mark was doing? Talk about that at your tables.
Usual teacher, professional development. You went to a conference last weekend, and she presented the powerful leaders, and it was about kind of not sticking to normal because it's not getting that nobody first time we're seeing this information. So there's ways
Our school in Dallas is part of Project Lead the Way, which has its own kind of tech apps engineering curriculum, and also is able to provide grants or funding. So we were talking about seeing if we could help spread programs like Project Lead the Way that have strong engineering curriculums and also grants and funding opportunities to more schools.
Yeah, that's awesome. Once you got that, Nicole. If anyone has a comment on something like that, I'd also love to hear that.
Any of your other schools?
First, robotics and when you're doing
We have Project Lead the Way for all of our engineering courses, but the thing with that is like you get like a certification at the end of the course, but only certain colleges like accept that. Whereas like with your computer science classes, you have like AP Computer Science, and then all schools accept that. But I really like Project Lead the Way because there's a lot of different courses that you can take, and they make sure that they train the teachers pretty well, so the teachers have to like go to the training, learn the entire curriculum, and then they have like people come and observe the teachers to make sure the teachers are actually doing what they're supposed to. So it's a good platform.
So maybe one thing we could do there is have some sort of legislation passed that says all public or all state Texas schools have to accept Project Lead the Way certifications. And also something that might be interesting is raising up the general public education standards to be comparable to that of Project Lead the Way.
Are you aware of how Project Lead the Way is implemented, or who helps get that stuff implemented?
I'm pretty sure it's like based from Rochester Institute of Technology.
Because I'm sure they're very dedicated to getting that around as much as they can. So working with them is big. And the thing we'll talk about a lot is that when you work in groups, whether it be with other companies or other students or other first teams, you tend to get a lot better results than you do working by yourself. So maybe that's something we're looking into, is working with them on that.
Does anybody have any more comments on that, or should we see if anybody has any other ideas?
Our group liked the idea of offered some more like physical resources for not just like Wi-Fi and computers, but also there's a huge surplus of like power tools and stuff like that. And also
huge, I would say conglomeration, I think that's the right word, of tech companies. And the idea is that they aren't the textbook people, they aren't the Texas Instrument guys who make the calculators. They want better educated students, and it is also in their best interest to lower questions, but unfortunately we do have to get going a little bit. So we're going to go to Houston to see what Houston was talking about. So are we just going to let them go quick? All right, awesome. So let's take a listen to what they're talking about.
Reassemble it all and by extraction.
Like they're watching us. Oh, they're talking to you guys.
Why is it quiet?
Hello?
STEM within the local and find ways to what's our company name? Yeah, so one of the key ways we wanted to figure out funding was to reach out to the major companies who handle manufacturing and possibly future automation within Texas. What do the manufacturers and the big companies want in their workforce, and what do they want to see, within their workers? What do students need to learn in order to meet these goals? How can we push the kind of education that employers want in their students? I think that kind of push, especially talking about that kind of point, getting these kids jobs, can really change legislation and finding the requirements that they want. We can put that into the curriculum, and eventually that will figure out the courses. And again, so earlier we talked about the DTE funding the programs in other states, along practices, and maybe benchmarking what they and see what work, what could be implemented into Texas system, if how beneficial that would be a starting point. Yes, so specifically, if we can reach out to sponsors, possibly get some sort of data from the big companies who are willing to sponsor the movement, we can move on to a local district. What exactly do local districts need? We talked about, for example, schools, they no longer have textbooks whatsoever, they have more demand for computers. What can we expect, how can we make CTE classes more accessible to other students who are doing other subjects? How can we get a student who wants to be a doctor to be interested in these products, for example? Yeah, right now, the courses that are offered, many of the students or also many students who have ideas already want to be a for other products and check that the application really discussed me. So if you want to be a doctor, you're not interested in this idea of use the robotics to in my career. So it's a way of getting other students interested as well that they can encompass. So there are a couple of ways that we can try to get students interested. We have the applications, even exempt certain CTE classes to promote more high achieving students, folks on the GPA game. Go ahead and take these classes.
Repeat what they say. So we're gonna repeat what they said when they send it to us in chat. Sorry about the really bad sound quality. It happens. There's not much we can do. But one of the things I heard them talk about that I can immediately repeat is they were talking about getting manufacturers, the people who are going to have all these people in their jobs. work with the school districts or whoever's providing the education to let them know what they need from their students. And a lot of this, we didn't talk about this too much in Austin, so this is pretty cool. But to connect this to some of the things we've done, we are, like I said, going to be working with TechNet a lot, and Caroline Joyner worked with TechNet. They are those industries that are going to be telling us, okay, what do we want from our students and how can we get that implemented? So a lot of the stuff you're seeing coming out of TechNet is going to be that, which means it's very worth looking at what TechNet is doing. That being said, the STEM application TEKs are another example of that, because that came out of some proposals from people like TechNet saying that we need to improve those. So working with them, maybe through Caroline or through whatever means, maybe you guys know some people, we could figure out, okay, how do we need to update these TEKs and what can we do to make sure those meet the standards of the industry, right? Do we have their comment yet? Okay, so we're going to wait for their comment. We're going to see if San Antonio has better sound quality. So let's go to San Antonio. So we're going to wait for their comment. We're going to see if San Antonio has better sound quality. So let's go to San Antonio.
Over this way, then. Ready?
So we decided to go with creating professional development.
So we decided to do that because our educators are the people who are inspiring our students. So when we give them more opportunities and have them host discussions among themselves, not only will they be able to go back to their schools and inspire their students, but they'll also be able to inspire educators from other schools. So they would create this miniature cascade effect within themselves of creating more robotics teams and ultimately bringing more awareness to STEM and STEM education.
Along with that, we also believe that it'll help promote innovative education, educational technology and material into the classroom, just by the fact that they're actually going to be better educated teachers and have more ideas on that subject.
Yeah, and then from there, we would be able to expand the STEM curriculum in K through 8 education. So once we're able to incorporate innovation among how we educate our students in high school, we can bring that to our middle school and even our elementary school levels, especially since that if we can expose children and students at that young an age to STEM, then they will more likely be able to stick through it when they go up to high school.
And then along with that education that they will gain through K through 8 education, they will also have a lot more experience in the field and real life experience, and it'll help facilitate cooperation between education and industry to provide students with career experience and help them better themselves for the long run.
Yes, with prolonged STEM education, we'll have students graduating high school with more knowledge, which will be better and more helpful for industries.
That's it.
Yeah.
All right, go.
Thank you. Yeah, so one cool thing they talked about there that we mentioned a little bit was trying to get professionals into the classroom, but let them keep their jobs. And they were talking about, getting those professionals to come and discuss with students, which I think would be something really cool for us to try to get some, system put in place that allows them to more easily get in the classroom and have these professionals talk to students. Because I can guarantee you one of the best things I've had through my career was getting to work with someone who's actually doing what I'm trying to do. I know for FTC in 7th and 8th grade, we went and saw this really cool robot that worked at a hospital called the Da Vinci robot. And does anyone know what the Da Vinci robot is, by the way? Yeah, tell everyone what it is. And I was one of the main designers for a robot that year, and looking at some of that, and I got to talk to one of the guys who works on it, does engineering with it. I actually learned some stuff and went back and applied that to my robot that year. So I definitely like what San Antonio was talking about. I definitely think that's going to be on the polls later, and that might be something we do for SACOT's platform. Oh, yeah. So the Da Vinci robot, essentially, it's this setup where someone can come and like work with this robot from a different location. It's got a whole bunch of like needles and stuff like that. They use it for surgery, and it slows down the movement of the user a whole bunch to allow someone to do much more precise movements and much more precisely, like do surgery on someone. It's really, really cool. Along with the fact that like you can at a point, you can decide on like a rod. You can have it spin around that point on the rod, no matter how the person like moves their hand. It's so cool. But yeah, like I said before, San Antonio, really great idea. Let's give them another round of applause for that. That was awesome. Do we have anything from Houston? Anything from Houston? Okay, so we're still waiting on Houston's chat to us so we can talk a whole bunch about what they said. We're going to get going with what we were doing before anyway, so that we can, keep everything going, and we'll get back to them as soon as possible. So, okay. Oh, right. What am I doing? Austin needs to present their ideas. Do we want to do that? Does that sound good? Okay, awesome. Let's give a round of applause to Sonia and Mark, who are going to come up and help us do this. Yeah, we might need help being reminded about what you guys talked about. So they invite you up to help talk. Just come up, and you guys are going to be presenting to the people in Houston and San Antonio.
Very tall. All right, so one of the things that we talked about here at the Austin Node was talking about calculators, graphing calculators in our STEM classes, and the availability of those to students. A lot of high schools around Texas, their schools don't provide them with calculators, or they just don't have access to those TI-84s, TI-89s. So we were talking about the schools and having it part of the Texas allotment, that each student gets distributed a graphing calculator instead of those students having to go out and buy that expensive calculators. So everybody has access to do just as well as those who do have a calculator. Wait, you're not on.
Another idea that we talked about was using Project Lead the Way, which is a group that creates curriculum pathways specific to engineering that gives students more hands-on experience, using their curriculum and maybe taking inspiration from it to enhance our own standards for general public education, and also making Project Lead the Way more implementable across the board and more available to schools and maybe poorer areas that can't quite afford it. We also mentioned, or somebody brought up this idea that a school district they read an article about has hotspots on their buses that they send out to poor neighborhoods in the evenings and just have them sit there so that people can access that Wi-Fi if they don't have their own internet access at home. And that's a really great idea because it provides all students to have some sort of access to maybe their online textbook material or any online homework that they do that they normally wouldn't have. So we were wondering if we could create some sort of initiative that does a similar thing across the state and in other areas.
Cool. All right, cool. Let's give a round of applause to all the nodes. Did we? Oh, we got something from Houston. Oh my God, we're gonna hear what they said. I'm excited. Okay, so from Houston, they said they want to communicate with local manufacturing companies to figure out what they want from future employees. Looking at other states' CTE programs to get an idea of how to further push it into Texas and possibly implement ideas in a new bill, and how other states have structured their CTE in schools to then be able to talk with districts and legislators. So that's pretty awesome. So restructuring CTE and getting manufacturers in on the education process. That's pretty awesome. So one more round of applause for Houston. All right. So you guys been doing a whole bunch of stuff. I'm sure you guys are tired. We're going to give you guys a 10 or 15 minute break. Then we're going to come back, and you guys are going to get to hear from Don Bossi. Yeah. All right, so have fun for 10 minutes. There's food back there if anyone wants any, some drinks. So yeah, go ahead.
Good. I can barely hear you, Jacob. You sound really tiny. Oh, can you hear me okay? Hey, everybody, how you doing? Well, so it's funny because I always say one of the things that kids learn in first is confidence in the face of complexity and complex challenges. And I got to say, Jacob is a true master of first because working with him through trying to connect Skype and Twitch and all this stuff, he never gave up. And he's like, this is just like being at a first competition. So I thought he was living proof that you can power through anything and eventually get it to work. So thank you, Jacob, and thank you, everybody. I really want to start by saying how much I appreciate all of you participating in this conference today. Advocacy is really important to FIRST, and I genuinely appreciate all the time and effort and energy and just the interest and enthusiasm that you all show to help us sort of get the message of FIRST and get access to FIRST to more and more kids. It's really important, and it's funny. A lot of times as I travel around, people will ask me like, "What's my day? What's a typical day like being president of FIRST, and what do I spend most of my time doing?" And actually, what you're doing today is what I spend a lot of my time doing. I've got great staff like Frank Merrick and Ken Johnson and Kim Weirman, who are our program directors, and they make sure our programs are all really awesome. But it's really my job to help people understand and to help communicate the impact of FIRST. And once people understand how impactful it can be, really spending my time thinking about how do we make these programs available and accessible to every kid everywhere. And so what you're doing and helping our elected leaders understand the importance of FIRST, the value of FIRST, and the value of supporting FIRST is really important. And that's what I spend a lot of my time doing. So in some sense, you're all getting a day in the life of Don today, which I'm excited about. And if any of you like it, you can come shadow me here someday or whatever, or go with me to Washington or Austin. But really, I do spend a lot of my time, and the thing I'm very passionate about is figuring out how to make these programs accessible to more kids in more places. I think probably you've all experienced in some way, shape, or form kind of how impactful participating in FIRST can be. And I'm willing to bet that a lot of you, with or without FIRST, we're going to have great lives. You're going to go on to do great things. Hopefully, having been part of FIRST, either you've developed new skills, you've developed new interests, you develop new capabilities that really sort of help you become even greater. And for that, I'm excited, and I hope you're excited. But the one thing all of our research shows us is that when we can get these programs to young people who are least likely to have access to the programs is when we can have the biggest impact. So for kids who maybe grow up in circumstances or come from communities where people don't understand the importance of science and technology and engineering, or don't recognize how much fun or how cool it can be, because maybe they just don't have access to the adult mentors with those types of experiences, or for a whole host of reasons, maybe they just don't come from a community where they look at these kids and say, hey, from an early age, you can go and do anything you want and be anything you want, and science and technology and engineering can help you get there. So our passion is really to figure out how to make these programs more available and more accessible to kids from all backgrounds, regardless of circumstances. And what we found is governments can be a really big part of that solution. A lot of the time, FIRST collaborates with wonderful, corporate supporters and other types of organizations that have a common mission. But when we really get government support behind this, it makes a huge difference. And I want to be really clear, when I talk about government support, it's not necessarily funding for FIRST. It's really funding for schools and other organizations to be able to participate in programs like FIRST. And so what you're doing, learning how to speak to elected leaders, learning how to message kind of the experiences you've had and the value of programs like FIRST to those elected leaders, and helping to get their buy-in and commitment to join us as partners and to make these types of programs accessible and available to every kid everywhere in any school or any community is really, really important. And so I just want to say, on behalf of myself, but really on behalf of the whole FIRST organization, that I really, really appreciate what you're doing. I'm very thankful that you're willing to give up a Saturday to do this. I know come a couple Saturdays from now you won't have time, so I appreciate the fact that now you're devoting the time to doing this. And I really want to thank all the conference organizers for making this available, because it's a really important thing you're doing, and I truly appreciate it. So hope that makes sense. I can try to answer any questions you might have, but just wanted to at least sort of beam into the conference and say thank you to all of you, and what you're doing is really important. And I look forward to kind of hearing about the outcomes from the conference, and kind of your work in advocacy and talking to elected leaders to get them behind what you're doing and supportive of what you're doing. Thank you. If there's any questions, you're going to have to scream them because I can't hear anything. So. Yeah, I heard somebody speak, but I couldn't hear. I could just like barely hear anything. Yeah. Yeah. So you said you're working with big companies to sort of help, big corporations to help get this word to elected leaders, right? That was your first part of the sentence. Okay. Actually, that's a great approach. I always say that elected leaders, they listen to two types of folks. One, they listen to voters, the people who elect them and put them in these positions, and then they listen to corporate residents in their districts or in their regions, because they create jobs and opportunity for people in their district. So working with corporate entities, is a great way to go. And I think, again, sort of hearing firsthand from the students the kind of impact, the kind of why these programs are important, the types of benefits and successes that you've seen as students, but also hearing from corporations who hopefully either having employed FIRST alumni or who maybe have mentors that are involved with the program, they can really speak to the importance of the programs. And both from an education perspective, but also from the perspective of workforce development, really sort of helping to create the types of future employees that these companies are excited to be hiring. And that's part of the reason why we really emphasize that FIRST is more than robots. What the kids are getting through the program isn't just about building and competing with robots. It's, of course, a lot of science and technology skills, but also a lot of skills like communication, presentation, teamwork, and leadership, which I think companies really value and which really differentiate kids, who are coming out of these types of programs. And so it's really powerful when, everybody pulls together, when we have the student voice, but also sort of the corporate voice in their communities, really taking that message sort of hand in hand to elected leaders and helping to engage them and helping them to, again, understand the real type of impact that these programs can have. So that's a really great approach. And I think, you're going to be more successful working together like that. So I think it's really important to help. Stories are really powerful ways of communicating, and I think as young people, I think it's important to tell your story authentically and in your voice. Talk about the type of benefits you've seen and the types of impacts it can have. Whether it made you more interested in science and technology, more interested in a career in a certain field, more comfortable speaking in public, and more comfortable in a leadership role. I think it's always really important to sort of put that in your own voice. And I think it's also important to recognize, maybe don't go too much into the fine details, but kind of stick with the bigger picture for folks until they understand it. And so, maybe think about some of the bigger picture types of impacts and how you see that helping your community, helping companies in your community, helping your school, and helping you personally. So I think it's really important to tell it authentically and in your voice, maybe through your own story or your own experience. But as I started saying, I really think the reason FIRST and programs like it are so powerful is, I recently heard a person speak, and he's a futurist, so he kind of looks at what's happening and predicts what the future will be like. And he was talking about the next 20 years are going to bring more change than the last 200 years. And he said, if you go back 200 years, 92% of us would have been farmers or would have been agrarian in nature. And so if you think how much change has happened in 200 years, and then you think that that's going to happen in the next 20 or 30 years, that's really rapid change. And so what we need is people and citizens, employees, leaders who are comfortable sort of dealing with rapidly evolving technology, dealing with new circumstances and how to address those challenges that they present. And if you really look at what you get through FIRST, it's just like what Jacob did today. I don't know if Skype has ever been connected to Twitch before, but we figured it out and hopefully it's working. But it's sort of that ability to sort of stay calm, stay focused, know you can do it, have confidence in yourself, to really sort of in the face of very complex challenges. And that's what the world needs. It needs young people who have that type of skill set, that have that type of confidence, and that have that kind of leadership to use all these types of skills to make the world a better place. And I think if you share that with elected leaders, through your own lens and your own story, I think they'll be very impressed and it'll be very effective. That's a great question. So a lot of the discussion's been around public schools, but how can legislation help private schools as well? And again, I think, part of this is sort of certainly a general awareness is a good thing. For better or worse, I often, when people get exposed to FIRST, they're like, where's this been? I've never heard of it before. So we're still the best kept secret, and we don't mean to be. Certainly there's nothing about us that we mean to keep a secret. And so I think in general, raising awareness, raising visibility to these types of programs and their importance is really step number one. Then the question kind of becomes, well, how can elected leaders help both in a public school sense, but also in a private school sense? And, I do recognize that, a lot of public funding goes towards public schools, but I think there's probably ways, beyond just the financial types of impact. It's sort of the recognition and understanding of the value of these programs that can be very helpful, and both, in private schools and public schools, even in community type settings. And so maybe it's not necessarily through financial funding or support, but I still think that there's a lot of goodness that can come just through raising awareness and visibility, and hopefully that brings other types of support. The other thing I will say is elected leaders talk to corporations a lot, right? So, and a lot of times corporations go to elected leaders and say, hey, I'm trying to, I need to find the workforce, or I have 50 job openings and I can't find people with the right skills. So I think elected leaders can also bounce that back onto corporations and say, hey, are you aware that there's programs like FIRST in schools locally that you could get involved and support? And so I think elected leaders, if they necessarily can't directly fund private schools, they can also be influential in putting good words with companies and corporations in your community to help fund and support those efforts in your schools. And I always tell people, you don't have to be a Fortune 100 or 500 company to get involved and to support FIRST. Every auto shop in town needs skilled mechanics, and there's, through FIRST, a lot of kids learn some really hands-on mechanical skills. And so I think actually trying to get any type of company involved and supportive would be helpful. So I think we just need to be creative and think about how to tap into all the resources that exist in every one of our communities. But hopefully we need to help spread the word and help make them aware. So hope that makes sense. Thank you all. Look forward to seeing you this season. Thank you all so much.
You guys about pitching and how you're going to go and talk to your legislators about all the stuff we've been talking about. So we're going to get people back up on Skype, and then we're going to go through a presentation and a little skit we put together for you guys. It's kind of fun. So we've been talking a bunch about advocacy and legislation. You guys are going to be talking to legislators about what we're talking about here so that they can get an idea of how much we care. And maybe that gets put in legislation. Maybe we make an impact on them. So we are going to talk about all the key points you have to go through when you're going through your legislative meeting. Hopefully I'll have slides up here in a second, but the idea is there are a lot of things you're not going to necessarily expect that are going to be kind of weird that we want you guys to be able to deal with. One of those being that legislators tend to try to make sure they only have certain things to deal with, and if you've got a problem that's new to them, they try not to address it, and you guys have to know how to work against them on that and make sure they really take your ideas and they really care about what you say. And like we've been talking here, we have a whole bunch to say. You have a whole bunch of personal anecdotes, and we want them to hear that. So really like that presentation quick. Let's let Nicole introduce herself so you guys can get familiar with people.
Hey guys, I'm Nicole. I'm a junior on FRC 2468, and I've been a part of FIRST for a few years.
Awesome. And she only recently got on the team and started learning about all this stuff. Do you have any comments about it and how weird it is or anything?
It's definitely been interesting learning about all the new things about like government and all that, and I wasn't really experienced with it before, but joining SACOT really helped me learn everything, and it's been a really fun time.
All right, so let's get started here. So you guys might remember we talked about advocacy before, but it's essentially going and trying to get your idea across to your legislator or whomever you're trying to convince that your point is really important and you're trying to get them to act on that. And in this case, we want legislation about it. So advocacy, like I just mentioned, is you're trying to get someone to support your cause. And you might notice there's a picture there of Dean Kamen. I actually went and talked to Dean Kamen while I was at a conference similar to this one up in Washington, where I gave him a whole speech about SACOT and what we're trying to do. And I'm hoping that by the end of this, you guys will be more than good enough to give that speech. So if you see Dean Kamen, you can go talk to him not only about, you know, like your team and why you think you're good, but also SACOT and why you think STEM is important. Maybe even thank him for what he's done for you.
So in February, you guys will get a chance to go down to the Capitol and talk with legislators or their staff and advocate for SACOT. And so this is a really important, positive experience that y'all get because you guys are the ones who are going to be making that impact for SACOT. And so now we're going to walk you through your meeting and how to effectively pitch. And so what we go through now will be in your folder in the SACOT advocacy tips. And so what we go through now is just going to recap what's on there. So before you go into your meeting, you want to know what you want to accomplish by the end of it. So your first goal is to spread SACOT. So you want to make sure that all the legislature in the Capitol know what SACOT is and support us. And so in order to do that, you want to make sure that they stay engaged. And so to do that, you want to be really passionate and bring a lot of energy. And so if you're boring up there, like, they're not going to be interested either. And so you also want to make sure you maintain contact with them. So that means giving them your email, getting theirs. If you have a question about policy or legislation, you can shoot them an email, they'll respond. And then whenever there's an upcoming conference, invite them and just maintain that contact and keep their support up. And so before the meeting, you want to make sure that you're prepared. So you want to prepare what you're going to talk about and some facts to really help emphasize the point of what SACOT is and what we're trying to do. And so you also want to research your representatives so you can tailor your meeting towards them. And so Jake will tell you what we did last year.
Yes, so when we went up to Washington and we were researching our legislators, we had a few key things we wanted to know about them. Was one, what committees are they on? What committees are they leading? What bills have they supported? And what bills are they supporting now? If you get all that stuff, I guarantee you can tailor your meeting very well to what their interests are. Now, I'm sure you guys are aware at this point, and I want to make it very clear. We want you guys in February to go and talk to your legislators and advocate for SACOT. And when you do, we want you to make sure to arrive early, just about 5 minutes, because you want to be kind of early, but not too early. You know how it is. Make sure to dress formally. That's just a thing you do when you go and talk to the legislators when you're up at the Capitol. And bring your materials. Be prepared, like Nicole was talking about. So that way, when you're done, you can exchange contact information. You can make sure they understand what you talked about during your meeting.
So when you begin your meeting, you want to introduce yourself and what SACOT is. So what our goals are, what we want to accomplish, how we're doing it, all that. You also, will be a good time to bring in those stats that you looked up to really help bring out the point of why we're trying to advocate for STEM throughout Texas. And like Mr. Bossi said, you really want to be authentic with your story. So tell them why you're interested in STEM, why you really think that STEM should be everywhere in Texas and every student should be a part of it.
All right, so you have to talk to your legislator about how SACOT affects their community. Their community is important to them. So if you tell them that this is going to make their community a better place and that people are going to care about it in their community, they will care about it. And you have to ask them a lot of questions while you're there because you only get this one meeting for a while. Get as much out of it as you can and answer any questions they ask you. And then, of course, at the end, thank them, give them your contact information, and try to keep in contact with them afterwards. All right, so now, and you can tell I'm rushing through this a little bit, but we do have a presentation for you guys, a little skit that's going to show you how a meeting should go for you guys, so it's not too alien to you when you get into it. So, without further ado, I would like to invite the award-winning SACOT players. So right here we have, if you can turn, I'll just talk really loud. Right here we have Mark and Irby who are waiting anxiously to talk to their representative, Mrs. Sonia Bhargava, about SACOT. Let's see how everything's going.
Hi guys, how are you guys doing today?
Hi, I'm Irby.
I'm Mark.
We're from the SACOT STEM Advocacy Conference.
Yeah, SACOT.
Okay. I'm Representative Bhargava. Nice to meet you. If you can get through some of your points really quickly, I'm a little short on time.
Okay, wait. That's not going so well. So maybe I should have told you guys, we're actually going to run through how not to do it first, and then we're going to tell you guys how to do it. So what just went wrong there? Does anybody know? Come on, you guys, you know what went wrong. What? She stuttered? Yeah, she's having trouble talking? Yeah, she wasn't ready to say anything? Yeah, right there. Timid and boring. Wow, you guys are just going to take that. Okay. Yeah, okay, so all of that. They did it all wrong. They didn't greet her. They weren't ready to talk. Let's see what happens when they actually are ready for their meeting.
Hi guys, how are you doing today?
I'm good. I'm Mark.
Hi Mark. I'm Irby. Hi, nice to meet y'all.
You too.
Great, so I'm a little short on time, but if you can get through some of your main points, that would be great.
Of course. We're from SACOT, the STEM Advocacy Conference of Texas. We're a group of high school students that work together to advocate for STEM and STEM-related education policy and work with the House and the State Senate to push that kind of stuff through and into actual realization.
Wow.
Here's our business card.
Thank
Feel free
you.
to contact us after this meeting.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Wow, okay, so that went a lot better. That time, they greeted her when she came in, they were ready to talk, they took control of the conversation. That was awesome. Let's see what goes wrong in the next part.
So, what did you guys want to talk to me about today?
Mark, this is your part.
No, the thing.
We wanted to talk to you about HB 395.
HB 395, the STEM bill?
Probably.
We think. Yes.
Well, it's a STEM bill, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Great. So I have another bill that I was talking about that I'm really pushing forward this legislative session. Do you see this handout right here?
Uh-huh.
Most STEM organizations have a 1-to-5 girl-to-boy ratio, and this is a problem that needs to be fixed. And this bill will really, really help students like you. How old are you guys again?
I'm 18.
Perfect, so you can vote for me in the next legislative session. If you vote for this bill, and if you vote for me in the next session, I will get that bill passed.
I didn't know this stuff. I guess it pertains to STEM education.
Great.
Okay, wait a minute. Okay, that went wrong too. What went wrong that time? Does anyone know? Yeah, definitely. What else? Right? Wasn't that meeting supposed to start off with them pitching to her? That's not how that went at all, right? So let's see what happens if they do it right this time and they talk louder in the mic so that the Twitch stream can hear them.
So, what did you want to talk to me about today?
We would like to talk to you about the bill HB 395. Have you heard of it?
Yeah, it's a STEM bill, right?
Yes.
Well, I have another STEM bill that you guys might really like. Do you see this handout right here? It says that most STEM organizations have a 1-to-5 girl-to-boy ratio, and this is something that needs to be fixed, and I think this bill will really help students like you. How old are you guys again?
I'm 18, and although this handout pertains to STEM education, we would really like to talk to you about HB 395 because it directly helps students like us.
With supporting HB 395, you can make actual change that will help our interests and further your own cause.
Sounds good.
Okay, now that was much, much better. The second she started going against them, they went, okay, we understand, but here's what we were really here to talk about. All right, so now, as I said, let's see what happens with the next part of the conversation.
So as you can see, Senator Bhargava, we'd like to get your help in any way we can.
Well, as you might know, I've been a really big legislator for STEM. I've been to a couple of first competitions. I'm really not sure what more I can do.
Oh, well, we had no idea that you were so involved. Thank you, I guess.
Yeah, you seem to have done a lot. I guess you don't need a vote for this bill.
Yeah. All right.
Okay. Wow. That went just amazing. What happened there? Anyone? Oh, come on. You guys know. You were laughing. It was bad. We know that. What happened? Yeah, they didn't do the research on her. What else? Anyone know? This one's a little weird, so. Boom, right there. She tried to deter them by saying, oh yeah, I'm already a big part of this. I don't need to do anything for you guys. But you're going to have a lot of legislators who believe in what you're talking about. This is a bipartisan thing. The idea is you're there for their support. So let's see what happens when they actually are trying to get her support.
So as you can see, Representative Bhargava, we'd like to get your help in any way we can.
Well, if you know, I've been a really big legislator for STEM. I've been to a couple of first competitions. I'm really not sure what more I can do.
Well, thank you so much for being so involved in the STEM community and the FIRST community. That is specifically why we are reaching out to you, Senator Bhargava, because we know that you will support our cause.
Exactly. By voting for 395, you can further your fight for STEM and have actual effect and impact on students like us.
Wow, you guys are right. Well, I'll definitely vote for the bill when it hits the floor.
Okay, now that was epic. That worked. They did a good job. Again, your legislator will try to deter you a lot, but you just got to keep coming back on them saying, hey, this is what we want from you. All we need is your support. Okay, so now they've only got a few more parts left of this conversation. Let's see how they screw that up too.
So, have you guys researched the fiscal impact of this bill? It seems like it'll cost schools a lot of money. And if you don't find a way to fit this into the state budget, I'm not sure if I can vote for the bill.
But isn't fiscal your job? Aren't we just supposed to tell you about the bill and tell you why it's good for STEM?
Let's come back some other time when we do a bit more research on this whole fiscal thing.
Fine.
Yeah, I think you should come back when you're a little bit more prepared.
Wow, that was painful. All right, so who knows what went wrong there? Yeah, so you're definitely right. It's important to understand where your bill stands financially. But the thing we're trying to show you here actually is a lot of legislators will try to trip you up with saying you don't know enough about the financial stuff here. But here's the thing you need to understand. It's their job to figure that out. You're there to tell them that there is money in the system, and we believe that money should be spent on STEM education. Yes, it's going to have some fiscal impact in some way, but that's for you to figure out. All I want you to know is I want you to do this, even if the fiscal impact is fairly large. That being said, make sure it's not, astronomical. But that's the idea we're trying to get across. It's their job, and be respectful when you tell them that it is. So let's see what happens when you do that respectfully.
So, have you guys researched the fiscal impact of this bill? It seems like it's going to cost the state a lot of money, and if you don't know how to fit this into the state budget, I don't know if I can vote for this bill.
Well, we understand that there will be some fiscal impacts. However, we believe this bill does a lot of good for what it's worth.
In my opinion, the benefit of this bill far outweighs any financial drawbacks it may have, and I genuinely believe that by voting for this, you'll do great for the nation and the economy at large.
Wow, that's really interesting. I really think I'm probably going to vote for this bill when it hits the House floor.
All right, awesome. That went really well. Now, they've talked a lot about the bill. They've only got maybe one more thing to talk about, and then they've got to get out. So let's see how they mess this part up too.
So you guys are doing really great. So one last thing before you guys leave, I have a couple of questions. Do you know how many schools in Texas have computer science programs? Also, do you know how much STEM activities cost your school district?
We think it's like 25% and probably $100,000.
$100,000 for STEM activities?
Yeah.
Yes.
We think.
You think?
We're pretty sure. I mean, yeah.
Okay, great. Well, do you guys have any more comments or questions?
No.
I think we're good.
Do you have any handouts or something that you can, I can take back from this meeting?
No. I can write something down real quick if you want.
Oh, no, that's okay. Thank you guys so much for coming in.
Yeah. Okay, that was terrible. Never leave a legislator meeting like that, much less anything else. So what did they do wrong? Oh, wow, there was a lot of hands. So let's go. Definitely. Oh, they didn't have a way to maintain contact afterwards. They didn't give her contact information. Yeah, they didn't provide correct statistics. They were making stuff up on the spot. There's a strategy. Yeah, they probably should have known a little bit more about what they're talking about, of course. Oh, wow, there's 3 hands right in the same place. At the end of the table. Yeah, they panic a little bit, right? You kind of like, I don't know. Okay, now on my left side of the table. Yeah, don't whisper to each other during a legislator meeting. That's a lot of disrespect. Okay, now on my right. Yeah, so all of that stuff went really, really poorly. Let's see what happens when they actually do it right.
So you guys have been doing really great. Thank you guys so much for coming in. I just have some couple of questions. Do you guys know how many schools have computer science programs in Texas? Also, how much do STEM activities cost your school district?
Unfortunately, we don't have that information with us, but I can send you a follow-up email if you want.
Yeah, that would be great. Cool. Well, do you have any other questions or comments before you leave?
I don't think so.
Are you guys good? Awesome. Do you have any takeaways or handouts that I can take away from this meeting?
We do. Here's a summary of what we talked about and a bit more information on HB 395.
Awesome. Thank you so much. It was so nice to meet y'all.
Likewise.
Great.
Thank you so much for giving up some of your time today to meet with us.
Yes, of course.
Before we go, do you mind taking a photo with us?
Yeah, of course. Of course. Great. Thank you guys so much for coming in.
If we post this, we'll make sure to tag you.
Yes, and I will tag you guys as well.
Hey, Mark, we should probably write a letter to her, handwritten.
That's a good idea. She'll remember us, and we'll be able to have a more likely that she'll vote for us.
Yeah.
All right. That was a good closing to a meeting. And a quick recap, they were given some questions they didn't have answers for. That's going to happen. You should be studied up, but you're going to get hit by something you don't know. Do not make up an answer. Tell them you'll give them the answer afterwards and try to get in contact with them immediately after the meeting when it's still fresh, and you can thank them for their time and make sure they're updated on what all you're doing, right? That is how you close a meeting. You're respectful and you're smart about how you do it. And that concludes the SACOT performance on advocacy and presentations.
Great, so I hope you guys really liked that skit. Did you guys learn something from that? I really hope you did. Raise your hand if you did.
I did, so yeah, I did.
We like to hear that, Jake. All right, so do we have a clicker? Our clicker's over there. Cool. All right, so we are going to talk to you guys a little bit about SACOT membership, but before we do that, we're just going to introduce ourselves. So I'm Sonia Bhargava. I've been on the SACOT Executive Committee for 3 years now. I'm one of the founding members, and I've been on Appreciate for 2 years now. And yeah, I'm the ones who've been sending y'all all the emails, so I'm sure you guys love me by this point.
Hi, I'm Selena. I'm a junior on FRC 246A, and this is my 3rd year in FIRST.
Great.
Before we get started, we want to get an idea of where you all are from. So if you're attending virtually right now, go ahead, send us a chat, and let us know where you're from. And if you are at the node at San Antonio or Houston as well, send us a chat and let us know where you're from. And now, for everyone that's here in Austin, raise your hand if you're from Dallas.
Woo!
Thank you for coming.
Thank you, guys.
And for all my people out there, raise your hand if you're from Austin.
Woo!
Yeah. Well, what about McAllen? Paris, Texas? El Paso? That's the problem. There is a lack of access to STEM in many regions of Texas, and our job as members of SACOT is to change that.
So that's why we are introducing to you the SACOT Membership Drive! So if you've been at one of our previous conferences, you know that we do this membership drive at every single conference we do. So why do we do it? What are the goals of this drive? First thing is to recruit as many people as we can, because the more people that we have in SACOT, the bigger of an impact that we can have, and a bigger voice that we can have when we go out to legislators and talk to them about education and talk to them about STEM legislation. Am I good? Oh, sorry.
You're very excited.
I am very excited. I don't want to blast your ears. Cool. So how the drive is going to work. We are targeting FIRST teams. All of us here, we are a coalition of FIRST teams. And why? Why are we targeting FIRST teams? We are driven, we are motivated, we care about STEM, and we care about the legislation that is going to happen in related to STEM. So we're going to also make this a little competition to see who can recruit as many people as possible.
As you can see, there are 1,571 high school FIRST teams in Texas. That's a lot. We only have 91 of those teams signed up for SACOT. So we need your help to get the rest of the teams signed up. Each one of you guys individually is going to help us get teams signed up. The more teams you get signed up, the more points you will get, and as we've said, we're going to have a competition to see who can get the most points. We call this adoption. Each one of you can adopt up to 5 teams at a time, and you will be responsible for getting members on that team signed up. So here are some ways that you can contact the teams. One of the ways is to go on the team website and find an email. And that would be all you would need to do, because we have an email template already written out on our website under Membership Drive and Drive Resources. The second way that you can contact teams is through social media DMs. So that would be like Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter, and that's how we got most of you guys here today. So you can see it's pretty effective. Another way that you can contact teams is if you already know someone on the team, go ahead and give them a call, send them a text, have them sign up for SACOT. And the last way that you can contact teams is to go ahead and directly approach them during competitions.
So as Selena said, competitions are a huge thing that you can utilize to get people to sign up for SACOT. I can tell you on behalf of 2468, we do that at almost every competition we attend. We go around in the pits and we give people our flyers and tell them, go ahead and sign up for SACOT so you can attend events like these that are meaningful and really will help the future of Texas. So, as we said, this is going to be a competition. So how many of y'all in here have gotten SACOT points in the duration of this conference? Woo! So SACOT points are a way of measuring your success in SACOT. It's a way of showing that how you participate and how much you participate. So basically all the purple haze over there, they've been answering questions, and so every time they answer questions or speak up about something, they get SACOT points. Nicole over there has been handing them out. And so we have an individual leaderboard as well as a team leaderboard. The individuals, the top 3 individuals who have the most SACOT points will get a $50, a $25, and a $10 Amazon gift card, respectively. And the team with the most cumulative SACOT points will get a banner that says SACOT MVP. And they'll get to put that in their pit, show it off to judges, show it off to other teams. You guys are going to be great at competitions if you have that banner. Last time Quad X got our MVP SACOT banner. So yeah, we are going to give you guys some time to go and adopt teams. But before we do that, for our FTC teams that are here and already in season, congrats, you're in season. I know a lot of y'all were at competition right now, so thanks for being here. These are the upcoming FTC competitions. I know a lot of FRC teams also host these district meets at their schools, so these are a great opportunity to get high schoolers signed up on the SACOT website.
We don't have time for you guys to do the membership drive. We are going to go through the website stuff so you guys can get an idea of how we're going to do it. But quick, I want to make 2 points before we're done with all this stuff. The membership drive is, 1, there are going to be prizes for this, so we want you guys to participate. The more you grow SACOT, the more it's going to help you, the more it's going to affect the people around you, and it makes it better the more you get involved. And like I said, there are prizes, pretty significant amounts of Amazon gift cards, by the way, just saying. That being said, the second point I want to make, Quad X won the last time we did this, so you guys have something to live up to.
And we are going to be announcing our individuals and our team leaders in February. So you have 2 months to get up on that leaderboard. All right. So we're going to show you guys how to adopt teams. So when you go home today, you can do that. Rip.
So first you go to SACOT.org. You guys heard of it?
So first you're going to go to our website.
How's it going, Sonia?
You're going to log into your SACOT website. How many of y'all have been logged in this whole time? Cool.
Awesome.
How you guys liking the website? Good? You guys like it? Okay. We have some feedback. Great.
They're new SACOT members, guys. They'll do it eventually.
They'll do it. All right, so to adopt teams, you're going to go under the membership tab. You're going to go to membership drive. You're going to go to team list. And here we have a whole list of all the FTC and FRC teams in Texas.
Don't ask us how we got this list.
So suppose I want to adopt FRC team 57 Leopards. So you're going to click, you see that they're open, so you're going to click on them. And you're going to click adopt. And after you click adopt, you have 5 days to recruit 5 members of their team until you have officially adopted them. If the team is not responding or you're not able to get that many people signed up, then you can release them. And you have a cool down period in which you can't re-adopt that team, but another team can.
We're auctioning off teams and people, guys.
Yeah.
Okay.
Great. And we have some really great resources for you. If you scroll down, you have, like where they are. If you want to knock on their door, sign up for SACOT. That's how we got most of y'all here. I'm just joking. Yeah.
Yeah. So like she said, 5 people is what you need to get to kind of own that team. If you don't do that, someone else can adopt that team and start taking points from you.
So each person you get signed up from that team, every time they sign up, you will get a SACOT point, or actually multiple SACOT points.
Yeah. And then if you guys are curious, other ways to get SACOT points are through polls, making polls, answering them, whatever. Yeah. Yeah, so this is specifically for high school students, so we're only doing high schoolers. Yeah, darn. All right.
And another great thing, if you want to know where our email template is, we're making this really easy for you guys. Go to Membership Drive. You're going to go to Drive Resources. We have the adoption email template right there for you to just fill in the name of the team, and we have the SACOT flyer that you can attach that email as well so they can get to know a little bit more about SACOT as well.
Awesome.
We did it.
All right. Good job, Sonia. Thanks. All right. So, thank you guys. Yeah. Speakers, right? Yeah. Okay. So now we have two pretty awesome speakers that are going to speak to you guys. The first one I'm going to let Sonia introduce.
Right. So our next speaker is a very special person in my life. My father, Piyush Bhargava, he's a board member on the First in Texas, and he's here to talk to y'all about SACOT and the importance of it in Texas. Please give him a round of applause.
How's everyone doing? How long have you all been in the room? When did the conference start? Both in the room and 4.5 hours? Okay.
This is a live stream, so you
Live stream, okay. Fantastic. Good?
Yep.
Speak closer, okay. And look right there?
There you go.
Okay. So I take instructions well. It's really good to be here, and why should you be listening to me? So Sonia talked about it a little bit, but I'll get into a little bit more detail. So I work in the technology industry. I've actually been with the technology industry for about 20 plus years. So STEM feeds into technology and a few other industries, so I have that perspective. The second perspective I have is I've been involved with the FIRST organization for a few years. I serve on the board and a few other things to just sort of help with the effort. And then finally, and maybe more importantly, I'm a parent as well. I'm a parent of students like yourself who are involved in STEM-related activities. FIRST in Texas, I think, does a fantastic job curating programs like this, which really allows students to get involved with STEM-related activities and still still maintain the cool in what is STEM. Now let's talk a little bit about why this is important. I'm going to refer to a few statistics, and I'm hoping to convince all of you. I think you heard Donna this morning, and then you had Carolyn, and then Don. All of them came sort of making the claim that what you're doing is really important. And I'm going to give you some statistics that hopefully convinces you that what you're doing is really, really important. Does that make sense? All right. So if you think about the job market in the US, there's about 130 million jobs in the US. 130 million. Only about 17 million of those jobs are STEM-related jobs today, or people involved with STEM-related jobs are only 17 million of that 130. So that's roughly 13% of the people are in STEM-related jobs. However, the STEM-related jobs in the economy are growing faster than any other sort of job class in the economy. And what's happening in the process is there's over 3 million jobs today that are not filled with people who have the right skill set. So it's the fastest growing sector in the economy. It's one of the most well-compensated sectors as well. However, only 13% of the people in the economy are really engaged in STEM-related jobs, and that's a problem. When I talk about the 13% of the people involved with STEM-related jobs, a very high percentage of those people are in healthcare-related fields, so nursing, physicians, hospital staff. So that skews the statistic even more, because people who are doing true engineering or technical jobs is even a smaller percentage. So if this trend continues, we're going to continue to have a bigger gap where we have unfulfilled, highly paying jobs that people don't have access to the right talent in. And that concerns us. You know, from an industry perspective, That's a big concern in technology today. We talk about immigration reform, we talk about education reform for all those reasons, because we are hoping that over time we are able to close that gap and get the right people with the right skill set available to work in the industry. Now let's talk a little bit about access. A lot of you are lucky to have programs in your schools which allow you to participate in STEM-related activities like FIRST. Not everyone is as fortunate. And therefore, we have a big proportion of our population that is actually getting left behind. And that's where I think initiatives like the STEM Advocacy of Texas and places where you can actually advocate for more school districts to have these sort of programs becomes really important. A couple of other things to talk about. If you think about there was a research done in 2016 by Pew Research. It's a research outfit. And they tried to rank order countries in the world in terms of how well they're doing in math and in science. So there were about 70 countries that they put in a ranking order. And the US was number 38 in math and number 24 in science. Now, when you think about the number of innovative technology companies that have originated in the US, the innovation that's driving a lot of the world economy has originated. A lot of that has originated with companies that are US-based. However, if you think about the pipeline and the ranking that I talked about, we're not doing that great. And so we have to be able to sort of change that narrative, change that trajectory, so that we can start placing more emphasis on science and math. Now, when I talked about access, let me give you a little bit more color on this. How many of you have APCS class in your school district? So a lot of you here, and I'm sure that's true for a lot of the people on the live stream as well. Only 30% of the students enrolled in those APCS classes are girls. So 7 out of 10 people enrolled in APCS classes are boys, only 30%. When you get to college, when you talk about STEM-related majors, the number of people, or number of girls engaged in STEM-related majors is about 20%. 80% is boys and 20% is girls. And then we talk about STEM-related jobs. So I talked about the jobs that are growing fast, have highly compensated, well-paying jobs. Only 25% of those jobs get taken by girls. And that's a problem too. And then you can take the same statistic and you talk about minorities, and the minorities that we're most sort of concerned about are African American and Latinos. And that percentage, along with girls, is underrepresented in a lot of the STEM-related fields. And why is that a problem? When you talk about jobs that are not getting fulfilled, and then you're leaving half the population behind, not letting them participate at equal sort of footing, the problem becomes worse, which is really important for a lot of the girls that you're here in the program. You're really going to be role modeling. You really need to encourage others to join. What happens oftentimes in middle and high school is STEM becomes less cool. And for that reason, a lot of the girls will sort of step away and get involved in other activities. And it's not just a problem that girls in the room need to address. Every one of us, I think, has a responsibility to sort of bring more parity to that demographic. Not because it's a good thing to do, but I'm trying to convince you it's a necessity for the economy, because we cannot leave people behind. Does that make sense? Good. Let's talk a little bit about, I work for a technology company. We think about these issues often and deeply. And in my opinion, there are 3 or 4 things that SACOT and other such platforms can really help enable. We've talked about the need for legislation. We've talked about the need to convince people, not just for legislation, but also you got to find funding. And I think Donna talked about it. It's not just good to have legislation that supports STEM, but you also need funding, which goes to the right places to affect that. So from our perspective, the first thing that is really important is public-private partnership. Public being government agencies, NGOs, etc. private sector being companies like Dell and National Instruments and others that may be engaged in STEM-related work. The partnership allows the right sort of platforms to be developed, the right level of funding and appropriation to go to STEM-related activities. So that's, I think, number one. The other thing that we have to think about is not everybody would be lucky to go to college, a four-year program in college. And the more we think about STEM-related sort of feeders to only be four-year programs in colleges, I think we're going to miss a big part of the population. There are a lot of people who go to vocational colleges, community colleges, and may not actually ever have the opportunity to go to a college, in a four-year program. So I think we need to think the aperture, the way that we think about feeders into STEM-related fields needs to be opening to include more than just four-year college programs. So that's the second thing I really want you to think about, because even in your friend circle, not everyone will have the opportunity to go to a four-year college, but everyone should have the opportunity to participate in STEM. Fair? The third thing I want to talk about is early stage involvement. Like I said, we lose a lot of people through the program in middle and high school, and the right place to start having this conversation, and I'm hoping you'll take this message to your elementary schools, etc. The same way as people learn about alphabets and colors, they should be learning about STEM-related activities. Because if you don't get people early to engage and get interested in STEM-related fields, statistics tell us that we will lose a lot of those people over time. So early engagement becomes really important. And then finally, I talked about gender parity. I talked about the need for having full participation, not just for boys and girls, but minorities, etc. Because again, full access becomes a really important thing. Even in the workforce, we have this issue where half the people we bring into the workforce in most companies are women leaders. But by the time we actually get to senior positions, that percentage drops drastically. So I'm just using that as an example, but hopefully you're trying to get my point, which is there's if I had to summarize in my finishing here, the thing I want you to take away from what I just shared with you is the following. One, what we're trying to do here with programs like First in Texas and with SACOT is to create a pipeline of people who are qualified for jobs that will become increasingly important in the future. So you're here not just to, partake in some of the conversations and pizza and lemonade, but you're here to really change the world in the way that it's going to evolve over the next couple of years. So what you're doing is therefore really, really important. Second, you got to bring your friends along. It's great you're here, but you got to bring your friends along, because the more people who are right now hesitant and staying on the sideline, not coming to programs like these, are the exact people that we need in the programs going forward. And finally, try to get people early. So if you have younger brothers, sisters, if you get involved with some volunteering work where you're doing Boy Scout, Girl Scout, going to early education, that's where you got to start to make the case. Because by the time people get to middle and high school, a lot of that narrative is getting set already. And that's too late to change the game. So that's really all I had. I'm going to finish here, but I'll open it up for any questions you may have.
Well, thank you. That was really awesome.
Thank you.
So, Mr. Bhargava is big in business and stuff like that. Is it okay if I tell him where you work?
That's fine.
Okay, he works at Dell. So if you guys have a lot of questions about how big corporations or companies factor into a lot of what we're doing, I'm sure he'd be happy to answer some of those questions. If anyone has any for him. Otherwise, okay. Well, yeah, we're running out of time, so we're going to go ahead and go on to our next speaker. Thank you so much. So give him one more round of applause. All right, one more speaker, and this is one of our biggest supporters here at SACOT. He's one of my favorite mentors. He's a really amazing guy, and a lot of the stuff today was made possible because of what he does for us and how much he has advanced our lives and been part of our STEM education. So everybody, please help welcome up our coach for 2468, Coach Norman Morgan.
y'all today? Who's here from FTC tournament this morning? How'd you do? Did you beat the Westlake teams? Y'all can go on out the door. No. Oh, wait, excuse me. It's not important. This is more important than whatever's on the phone right now. Not really my wife. I had her call me on purpose. And really and truly, I want you to know this is important. Okay, what you're doing today is important. I want to start off and ask you a question. What do these terms all have in common I'm fixing to use? Social media. A few of you in here probably use that, right? How many of you have a smartphone? How many of you have an e-reader, a Kindle, or some type of device to read on? How many of you use apps every day? Who's using Wi-Fi today? Any Bitcoin people in here? How many you got? 40th of a Bitcoin. How long is it taking you to get that? 6 months ago. Who doesn't know what Bitcoin is? Who thinks it's going to be something important in the future? Digital footprint. Do you have one of those? Selfie. That sign on the keyboard that is this, what's it called? Eric, what do you call that symbol on the keyboard? Pound sign, and you call it a hashtag. Vlog, Facebook, Google, tweet, emoji, meme. What do all those terms have in common? Media related, technology related. Okay. It's what you use. What else?
They're only about 10 years old.
Close. Key point. Who's 18 in here? 18 years ago, the terms I just used did not exist. Now think about that. 18 years ago, terms that did not exist that you think are everyday part of your life. Lisa, are there jobs now that you couldn't even have dreamed of when you were their age? When's the first time you used the internet? Eric, what's the most incredible thing you can think of now that wasn't here when you were in college?
The internet itself. I'm kind of old.
So let's talk about who you are and what you represent. How many of you have been to a tournament or have worked with adults and you've heard this statement? Man, I wish that I had this when I was in school. Raise your hand. Now, how many of you had a conversation with somebody like that? How many of your parents have said, I wish they had this course when I was in school? You're very fortunate, okay? How many students? Where's Mark? Mark, I gave Mark an assignment a while ago. Mark, how many students in the state of Texas? 5.5 million students. Luke? How many students are participating in SACOT today, in person or on the stream, approximately? Give me a...
On the stream, we have about 150 people, and then the SACOT Executive Committee is about 10 people.
Okay, and then here today? 50. And then in San Antonio?
We got 200 watching.
San Antonio's watching right now? Yeah, hey, Bronx Bots, how are you guys doing? Hope you're doing well. How about Vortex? Okay, so what's that total? Anybody have an idea? We'll be really aggressive and we'll say 500 people. Is that fair? So Mark, what was the number? 5.5 million divided by 500. I know we have some really smart kids in this room. So give me what that number is. I'm an old ex-basketball coach. Numbers like that don't appear on a basketball court. So what is that number? 11,000. What's your name? Alex, you represent 11,000 students in Texas. And 11,000 students need a voice from every single one of you in the state of Texas alone. That's not counting Oklahoma, New Mexico, Alabama, Arkansas, all the other states. You have a voice that's important. You have chosen to do something different that the kids from your school are not doing. My kids hear this all the time. Your friends are home watching SpongeBob or playing with silly string. One of these days, I hope they are happy with you being their boss, because you're doing something that's going to make you better. But the important part is you need to do something that will change the face of the future for that first grader who's in class right now. Or that kid who got born today. 18 years from now, they'll think back to Wi-Fi and selfie and Facebook and Google and meme, and they'll laugh because they're like, that is so old school. That's like Happy Days. Who knows who Happy Days is? What was the famous guy on Happy Days? The Fonz, okay? How many of you have ever seen the Fonz? You've never seen that because you don't know. It's gone and it's came and it's went. Things are going to come and they're going to go and they're going to pass. But what you do this year and what you do this next year and what you do the next 2 or 3 years is going to impact students 10, 15, 20 years from now. It's so, so important. This is not about 2468. This is not about Quad X. This is not about 418. It's not about Lady Cans. It's not about Bronkbots. It's not about Vortex. It's not about FIRST. It's about students being empowered and students changing lives. And your story, you heard Don say this morning, your story is so important. Donna talked about representative leadership. You are the representative leadership. Who is representing the high school voice in STEM education in Texas? Is there anybody at your school besides you? Is there anybody at the state level besides us? And if you don't do that, and you don't go home and recruit others, and you don't do your homework that Sonia talked about, yes, we're trying to bribe you to win some prizes, but that's not the important part. The important part is we need to change. We need to provide opportunities for more students. We mentored Vandergrift last year in FRC. I can remember Rad emailing me and saying, will y'all mentor us? And I kind of laughed. It's like, mentor Vandergrift in robotics. Lassa, if y'all had gotten that email, would you have kind of laughed about that? They're pretty amazing, right? How much we impacted them is very, very, very little. Howdy Bots contacted us a couple years ago and asked us the same thing. How we impacted them is very, very little. It's not about what we do. It's not about how strong we are. And it's not about 2468. And it's not about the birdie. It's about a much bigger picture. And my challenge to you is that you need to go home, and you need to believe in yourself and believe that you have an amazing story that can change lives, can change your school, and can impact that kid who was born today. And 18 years from now, somebody's going to use a term. What term is brand new this year that's never been coined before? Does anybody know? I mean, know what a term that's been coined this last year that's brand new? And I'm asking you because I don't know. What is the term that's, Sonia? I mean, huh? Bougie. What is bougie? Is it okay for me to ask that in public? Is it okay for me to say that as an adult in front of kids? Oh, I was worried for a second. Bougie. So bougie. 18 years from now, some teacher's going to be standing in front of kids and saying bougie, and those kids are going to be like, he's so old school. He doesn't even know the real terms now. You will grow and you will move on, and time will pass. And if you don't choose to make a difference, it's just going to be the same. How old is First? 20 plus years. Is First the only organization out there like this? No, VEX, just as important. How many VEX teams in the state of Texas do we know? I actually have it. Courtesy of Dan Mance today. Anybody know who Dan Mance is? Jake, who's Dan Mance? Mentor 3310. Who's 3310? Blackhawk. Pretty good team. Who does Dan work for? Vex Robotics. Okay. Dan says there are 1,400 teams this year in 550 high schools in VEX. It's not about First, not about VEX, not about BEST, not about TCEA, not about bot ball, not about underwater robotics, not cybersecurity, not destination imagination, not Odyssey of the Mind. Are all those things kind of the same? They're to make kids do things outside of class. It's important that you go home today and you take what you've learned today and you internalize it and you impact somebody else. If we don't go reach out and we don't go impact others, then a year from now, it's going to be the same. Those kids at my high school, I graduated in a class of 6. I was the top 10%. A little more. They don't have computer science. Kids in West Texas don't have computer science. Are y'all still having to take unexcused absences to go to tournaments? Do y'all have to take an unexcused absence to go to a tournament? So they go to a tournament. How do you make up an unexcused absence for Lady Cans? You don't. So it's important enough for them to miss school to go do this. Is that fair? I don't think it's fair. I think that what they're learning, they're doing at the tournament and what they've done during the season is just as important as physics or math or science or history or English or any other courses. I know this is being recorded. I will tell that to every one of those teachers on my campus. I absolutely, truly believe that. So you have got to make a personal choice to impact your team, and your team has got to make a team choice that you want to impact others and you want to drive the message. I hope before you graduate from high school, you do one thing to impact another individual and one thing to impact another school or another team to spread the message about STEM education. Because if you don't, 5 years from now, we're going to be right where we are. 10 years from now, we're going to be left behind because some other state will or some other country will. And it falls on our shoulders to represent that. How many people per person in here? Think about that. You represent a very, very big population. Thank you for coming today. I know you could have done lots of things. It's very easy for you to have done this. Do your students at home really understand what you do? Probably don't. They go look at a robot and they look at it and think, that's no big deal. It's much more about the robot. impact those around you and impact those in the future. Thank you for coming today. Thank you guys for having me.
Thank you, Coach. All right, so we got one or two more, not one or two. We have one more thing for you guys, and then you guys are out of here. So we just have a few closing remarks if I could get the presentation behind me. So, what's next when you guys leave this room? What do we want you to do to represent those 11,000 kids, each one of you, individually? We want you to go recruit members for SACOT, because the bigger your voice is, the more people will listen to you. Maybe one day you will be able to give someone else in another community the same opportunities you have.
Yeah, so it's time for you guys to take action, and we've been mentioning legislator meetings and going and talking to your representatives. So Brittany, if you could just, or you have a clicker?
I don't have the clicker, Brittany.
Okay. All right. So in February, we're going to meet back up, and we're going to do this thing called the Robot Invasion is what we're naming it. We're going to go up to Capitol Hill, have a demo of all of the cool FRC robots, and hopefully talk to as many legislators as we can to really spread the message of SACOT and do exactly what we are preparing for you guys here. So mark your calendars. It's February 18th. 2019. The room is already reserved, and so after this conference, keep recruiting members, keep getting your SACOT points. That's when we will also announce the winners who have the highest number of SACOT points.
Amazon gift cards. Sorry.
And gift cards. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, so thank you guys so much for coming out. All right, give yourselves a round of applause. You guys are awesome. We also want to thank Houston and San Antonio for working with us. That's going to be Bronkbots and Vortex for working so hard to get this going. They are part of the voice that we're trying to build, and thanks to them, we were able to put this on. So let's give them a round of applause as well. Now, quick before we go, I want to talk to you guys because there's some other people I want to thank in this room. I am very, very fortunate. I mean, just look at the room we're in. This is my high school, guys. This is awesome that I get this. And there's two people here who have helped me feel like the most opportunistic person in the world. I've gotten every opportunity. I've been in one of the best situations I could possibly be. And without those people, this would have never happened today. SACOT would have never happened. I want to thank two of our best mentors, my mom and dad, Lisa and Eric Rothfuss, for helping us do this. And because of them and because of you guys, and if we all go out and we try super hard and we get people to come to SACOT and we really care about what we do, and we do exactly what Coach says, go out and represent 11,000 other students. If we do that, whether it be passing legislation or going to another SACOT conference, I hope one day there's someone from a really bad community, someone from McAllen, coming here soon saying, I am lucky that someone gave me these opportunities, that there was a group of people who cared enough to do something like that for me, and you guys are those people. So thank you to everyone who made this popular. Thank you, Houston, San Antonio, our mentors, everybody, and thank you guys for coming out. That has been the SACOT Virtual Conference.
And
Go
everyone
home.
tuning in virtually. Thank you, guys.
Memes are going to be around forever. I don't know what he's talking about.